Picture a story where wishes come true. A whopping $500 million windfall and control of a booming business. That's the reality that unfolded for us as Nora, my sister-in-law, joyfully celebrated our family's newfound wealth. Among the staff, whispers spread like wildfire as they soaked in the news. With a triumphant tone, Nora announced, "Quiet, please. It's time for my husband to step into his role at the company and claim his $3 million share." Her words triggered laughter among the employees, intrigued by the sudden twist. In the midst of the excitement, my older brother Jack pored over legal papers passed to him by our family's lawyer. His face drained of color as he absorbed the contents of our father's will. "Take a look at this," he whispered to Nora, who gasped in shock as she read the document. "Hi there. I'm Stella, a 26-year-old who's been deeply involved in my dad's business since I was little. I've seen him build it up from scratch into the success it is today. Even when things got tough at the start, he never gave up. And that really inspired me. As the business grew, I wanted to help out, especially since my mom handled a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. My parents always encouraged me to choose my own path after high school, but I knew I wanted to be part of Dad's legacy. That feeling only got stronger as I got older. When I finally joined the family business, I was lucky to have Leo, a longtime employee, show me the ropes. He taught me all about how things work without treating me differently because I'm the boss's kid. Learning from him gave me a real understanding of what we do and how to do it well. Meanwhile, my brother Jack, who's just a year older than me, was off studying management, planning to take over from Dad one day. He'd often talk about it with his friends, confident that he was meant to lead the company someday. This tale peels back the layers of family dynamics, inheritance, and the pursuit of success within a business setting. It challenges the idea that privilege equals entitlement, instead highlighting the importance of earning one's place through hard work and dedication. As the story unfolds, unexpected twists shine a light on the true meaning of legacy and responsibility. My brother Jack led a life cushioned by stability and certainty, the envy of many of his friends. "You're so lucky," they'd say, eyeing the secure future Jack had courtesy of our family's business. The conversation often turned to me, his younger sister, sparking curiosity about any potential rivalry for control of the company. "Oh, my sister. She's around, but she's more a behind-the-scenes type," Jack would explain, somewhat brushing off any speculation. Jack had his own approach to getting ready for leadership, spending extravagantly and enjoying socializing under the guise of gaining management experience. He knew that being the future president made him popular, especially with women attracted to his status. Among many admirers, he picked Nora, the most dazzling of them all, as his wife. Their wedding was a spectacle, followed by a lavish honeymoon and the building of a grand mansion to start their luxurious life together. Nora seemed perfectly content in her role, living in luxury and always having things her way with Jack. Compared to her, my life seemed ordinary, quietly working alongside my mother in the company. I was happy with my behind-the-scenes role, far from the glitz and glamour Nora enjoyed. During family gatherings, Nora often looked at me with a hint of superiority in her laughter. "You don't really fit the image of a CEO's daughter," she'd say, finding the idea amusing. I never understood Nora's fascination with extravagant living, a lifestyle that felt foreign to me. She probed, unable to grasp why someone born into wealth would show little interest in flaunting it. "Living so simply despite your family's riches, I just don't get it," she'd say, as if the idea of not showcasing wealth was beyond her comprehension. This difference in our lifestyles highlighted our contrasting values and viewpoints. While Nora valued material possessions and social status, I found fulfillment in quietly contributing to our family's legacy. It wasn't about money or titles for me. It was about being part of something meaningful. Despite being the daughter of the company's president, as my brother often pointed out, I didn't seek attention or special treatment. I believed in treating my colleagues with respect, just like anyone else. My approach to work and relationships within the company was rooted in humility and mutual learning. I recognized that many of my coworkers had skills and knowledge surpassing mine, and I respected the importance of every role within our organization. My brother held firm to the belief that a boss must always maintain an air of superiority to command respect from their team. He was surprised by my perspective and criticized my approach, insisting that a true leader should assert dominance and delegate mundane tasks to others. According to him, This mindset separated the real leaders in our family from the rest. When I tried to defend my viewpoint, stressing the importance of respecting all team members regardless of their role, my brother quickly dismissed my arguments. He claimed that such thinking would make me unappealing to potential partners. Nora joined in, suggesting that my attitude and outlook on life would leave me alone forever, advising me to change to become more attractive. My brother even threatened my job security once he took over the company, highlighting our vastly different values and approaches to leadership and personal relationships. Following the uncomfortable confrontation, my mother stepped in with her support, reminding me of the value I brought to the company and advising me not to let my brother's criticisms affect me. My father also made his disapproval of my brother's attitude clear with his stern demeanor. It was evident that my parents didn't share my brother and Nora's views, leading to a tense period where they avoided our family home. Reflecting on the strain caused by this disagreement, I realized that despite our differences, it was crucial for each of us to stay true to our principles. While my brother and Nora continued their lavish lifestyle, frequenting fancy restaurants and luxurious resorts to maintain a certain image, I remained dedicated to my values. I focused on making meaningful contributions to our family business, cherishing the importance of humility and teamwork that I had learned over time. Jack was on track to become the president of our father's company, a role he was being prepared for as our father worked diligently to expand his business. One evening at home, my father suddenly felt intense chest pains. Worried, I urged him to stay calm while I called for an ambulance. In those tense moments, he directed me to a letter in a drawer, insisting, "Stella, read this. If anything happens to me, the lawyers will handle the rest." His words were barely out before he lost consciousness, and despite being rushed to the hospital, he passed away without regaining consciousness. Jack and Nora, my brother and his wife, were abroad during this crisis and missed being with our father during his final moments. They returned from their vacation 3 days later, just in time for the funeral. Jack's comment, "We're just glad we made it on time. Never thought Dad would pass while we were away," struck me as insensitive. Their casual arrival and failure to acknowledge the efforts my mother and I put into organizing the funeral were deeply disheartening. I was surprised by his criticism, especially since my mother and I had carefully chosen the menu together. I told him I didn't appreciate being told what to do, explaining that his behavior showed a lack of understanding of true leadership. Jack didn't stop at bossing me around. He also gave orders to the employees, including Leo, a highly respected member of our company. When I heard Jack ordering Leo, I stepped in and scolded my brother for his disrespectful attitude. Jack argued back, asking why he should have to show humility to an employee and insisting that he deserved more respect as the future president. Nora supported Jack's actions and threatened to fire me if I continued to challenge him. Suddenly, a man interrupted our heated argument. He introduced himself as the lawyer who had been handling our father's affairs, including his will, something my father had mentioned to me before he passed away. This news caught Jack and Nora's attention, especially when the topic of inheritance came up. They eagerly welcomed the lawyer, hoping to learn more about the fortune they expected to inherit. As they discussed the inheritance, Jack became emotional, asking about the rumored $500 million. Nora couldn't contain her excitement at the thought of such wealth, seeing it as their ticket to a dream life. This announcement caused a buzz among the employees, but Nora quickly hushed them, proudly anticipating their imminent rise to power. This situation really showed the contrast in values and priorities within our family, especially between Jack and Nora's focus on material wealth and my dedication to honoring my father's legacy with respect and humility. The lawyer's arrival signaled the start of a new chapter, one that would reveal my father's true intentions for his inheritance and the company's future. When everyone expected the company and a $500 million inheritance to go to Jack, the contents of the will caused quite a stir among the employees. One of them couldn't help but laugh, and soon it became clear why. As Jack and Nora read the will, they were shocked to discover that the entire company was to be passed on to me, the eldest daughter. Jack was visibly stunned, his face turning pale as he protested, insisting there must be some mistake. The lawyer present during this confrontation confirmed the legality of the will, which only made Jack more agitated and unwilling to accept the decision. He argued that our father must have been mentally unfit when making such choices, suggesting they were invalid. This attack on our father's judgment pushed me over the edge. I defended our father's honor and integrity, refusing to accept Jack's claim to lead the company. My brother reached his breaking point as I openly questioned his qualifications, highlighting his lack of contribution to the company's well-being. Jack and Nora defended themselves, claiming they had prepared for his presidency by building a luxurious mansion and living a lavish lifestyle. I countered, emphasizing that these surface-level actions didn't prove leadership or business sense. Furthermore, I revealed the letter from our father detailing the financial support he had given Jack, including the mansion and other extravagances, which was actually an advance on Jack's inheritance, significantly reducing his share. Nora panicked upon hearing this, realizing the implications of the will and letter. The whole situation played out as a clash between expectations and reality, exposing the deep divisions within our family over our father's company's legacy and the true qualities of leadership and responsibility. When the $500 million inheritance was mentioned, Nora's confusion and frustration were evident. Wait, so the whole inheritance is only worth $500 million? Have we really spent that much already? This doesn't seem fair, she lamented. An employee who had previously laughed stepped forward to clarify for Nora that the $500 million represented the company's value, not personal wealth available for inheritance. Nora struggled to understand this distinction, unable to grasp that company funds weren't meant to be divided up as personal inheritance. I explained to her that the company's wealth was meant for its growth and sustainability, not personal inheritance, meaning Jack's share of any personal inheritance would be minimal. This revelation visibly shook her, showing a clear misunderstanding of the difference between company assets and personal wealth. At this point, Jack seemed to have a moment of realization or perhaps denial. He turned to the employees, questioning their support for me as president over him, arguing that leadership was his birthright due to the charisma he believed he shared with our father. However, the silence that followed spoke volumes. None of the employees came to his defense. Leo, a veteran and respected figure in the company, then addressed Jack directly. He contrasted the genuine charisma and foundational legacy of our father with Jack's misplaced arrogance. Leo's words resonated, emphasizing a respect earned through actions and humility rather than entitlement. He pointed out Jack's absence and lack of contribution to the company's daily operations, dismissing Jack's excuses of networking as irrelevant to the real work needed to sustain and grow the business. In contrast, Leo praised my efforts to understand and contribute to the company from the ground up, acknowledging the sincerity and dedication I shared with our father. This endorsement from Leo and the collective agreement from other employees highlighted a shared acknowledgement of my suitability for leadership, based not on entitlement but on commitment and respect for the legacy and future of the company. Touched by their support, I felt a renewed sense of responsibility and gratitude. The employees' acknowledgement of my efforts and their trust in my leadership validated the path I had chosen, one that honored my father's values and our company's collective ambition. I thanked the employees, recognizing the unexpected turn of events, but emphasizing my dedication to the company, a passion inherited from my father. I asked for their ongoing support, and their warm applause strengthened my determination. I then emphasized the importance of every team member, stating, "Anyone who disregards this isn't fit for a leadership role," hinting that even a president could be held accountable. Jack was taken aback by my words. "What do you mean? I'm your brother, and you're saying you'd fire me if I were president?" Jack protested, confused by my prioritization of competence over family ties. He looked for support, but the employees' cool responses indicated their agreement with my viewpoint. Feeling isolated, Jack and Nora swiftly left the scene. After the incident, Jack found himself without a job, relying on the modest inheritance he had received, which quickly dwindled. "Can you lend me some money, Stella?" he later asked. However, faced with his ongoing lack of effort to find work, I was put off by his dependency. I advised our mother against offering financial assistance, pointing out his fall from grace and the loss of his once supportive friends. Nora, who had envisioned a life of luxury as the company president's wife, also received little sympathy from her social circle after these events. Eventually, financial strain led them to sell their mansion, a temporary solution that briefly restored their extravagant lifestyle but proved unsustainable in the long run. Their savings dried up, and when they finally considered getting jobs, their lack of experience and their tarnished reputation made them unemployable. These events highlighted the consequences of entitlement and the importance of hard work, humility, and maintaining good relationships. In the ups and downs of life, Jack found himself in a new role far from his previous aspirations. He secured a part-time job at a convenience store, a significant change from his earlier plans. This job, unfamiliar and challenging, placed him alongside younger colleagues who often noticed his lack of experience. It was a humbling experience, forcing Jack to confront the realities he had previously overlooked. Nora also experienced a significant shift in her daily life. Her days as a full-time housewife, once filled with leisure and luxury, were replaced by the demands of part-time work. She took on a role as a cashier in a supermarket, working long hours for modest pay. This new chapter for Nora was marked by hard work and perseverance, a departure from her previous expectations. As my brother and sister-in-law adjusted to their new circumstances, I utilized the knowledge and insights gained from my behind-the-scenes work in the company. With the guidance of Leo and our dedicated team, we concentrated on expanding the business, drawing strength from the challenges we encountered. The ordeal with my brother not only tested our determination but also strengthened our unity. Together, we strive to honor my father's legacy by growing the company and fostering a sense of community and achievement among our employees. This contrast in our paths highlighted life's unpredictability and emphasized the importance of adaptability, humility, and hard work. While Jack and Nora adapted to their new realities, their journey served as a reminder of the lessons learned from overcoming adversity. As for me, I remained committed to leading our family business forward, treasuring the wisdom of the past while building a brighter future for everyone involved, fulfilling a promise to honor our father's memory.
I don't know what my son sees in you. You'll never be good enough for him. Leave before you ruin more lives, Warren snarled, his eyes narrowing as they bore into me across the dinner table. My hands trembled, clinking my fork against the plate. What did I ever do to you? I managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. Just being you was enough, he retorted coldly, not even blinking. The tension in the air was suffocating. Jaden sat beside me, his jaw clenched and face pale. I glanced at him, hoping for support, but he seemed as stunned as I was. Warren's words cut through the jovial atmosphere we had started with when we first arrived. Now it felt like those words were crumbling around us. It had been a typical family dinner, or so I thought. Jaden's mother, Diana, had filled our plates with roast chicken and mashed potatoes, while his sister, Mallory, chatted about her latest project at work. Things were going well until Warren decided to speak his mind. "Elena, don't let him get to you," Mallory murmured from across the table, her voice a soft plea. Warren shot her a withering look. "Mallory, stay out of this. You have no idea what kind of woman she really is." Jaden finally found his voice. "Dad, that's enough." His voice was firm but tinged with a shaky anger. I could see him wrestling with his loyalty towards his father and his love for me. Warren ignored him. "You think she loves you? She's after your money. Doesn't matter how long she plays this game, it's always the same. A gold digger." "Stop it, Warren." Diana's voice quivered. She reached out to touch her husband's arm, but he brushed her aside. "Mom, Dad, this is not fair," Jaden said, standing up, trying to get between us. "I love Elena, and she loves me." Warren scoffed. "Love? You're naive, Jaden. You think a woman like her at her age isn't looking for financial security?" I felt my face burn with anger and humiliation. "I have a career. I've worked hard for everything I have. I don't need Jaden's money." Warren's laughter was dry and sharp. "Sure, keep telling yourself that, but we all know the truth." Jaden's fists clenched at his sides. "Dad, that's enough." His voice was louder now, echoing in the dining room. "If you can't accept Elena, then maybe we shouldn't come here anymore." Warren's eyes gleamed with a cold satisfaction, like he'd achieved what he set out to do. "Maybe you shouldn't." I rose from my seat, feeling a sharp sting of betrayal. "I think it's time we leave," I said softly, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair. Jaden grabbed his car keys, his face set in a hard line. "Yeah, let's go." We walked out of the house, the door closing firmly behind us. The night air was chilly, matching the iciness that settled in my heart. As we reached the car, Jaden stopped and turned to me. "I'm so sorry, Elena. I didn't think he'd be this way." I looked at him, feeling a mix of sadness and love. "It's not your fault, Jaden. But what are we going to do?" I don't know, he admitted, the hopelessness in his voice breaking my heart. As we drove away, I couldn't shake Warren's words from my mind. Was this the beginning of a rift too deep to mend? The night felt darker than it should, and the road ahead seemed long and uncertain. The night after dinner at Warren's, I laid awake, staring at the ceiling. The humiliation from Warren's words stung deeper than I wanted to admit. Jaden was beside me, fast asleep, his breathing steady. I envied his ability to shut everything out, even if just temporarily. The next morning, I sipped my coffee in silence as Jaden sat across from me, his face clouded with worry. "Elena?" he started, unsure of how to continue. I put my cup down, looking at him. "You don't need to say it. Your father has made his feelings very clear, Jaden. What I don't understand is why." "He's just protective," Jaden sighed, rubbing his temple. "He thinks everyone is out to take advantage of us." "That still doesn't justify his behavior," I replied, feeling a sharp edge in my voice. "I know." Jaden looked defeated, "but he has this way of making me doubt everything." I stood up, pacing the kitchen. The wooden floor creaked under my feet. "Jaden, you know me. You know I'm not looking for anything but a life with you. Why is that so hard for him to accept?" Jaden stood and took my hand. "I believe you, I do. But Dad, he's not easy to change." My phone buzzed with a notification. A text from Mallory. "Hey, can we meet up? Need to talk about last night." I glanced at Jaden and showed him the message. "Go," he said, dropping my hand. "Maybe she can provide some insight." I met Mallory at a small cafe downtown. She looked anxious, her fingers tapping on the table as I sat down. "Elena, I'm so sorry for how Dad treated you," she began, her voice shaky. "He's always been this way, ever since." "Ever since when?" I asked, leaning forward. "Ever since Uncle Leonard came back into our lives," she admitted, looking over her shoulder as if expecting Warren to appear. "What do you mean?" I asked, puzzled. "Leonard has always been the schemer, stirring up trouble. Dad became more paranoid and controlling when Leonard returned from overseas." She ran a hand through her hair. "I think they're plotting something against you." "Why would they do that?" I whispered, despite myself. "Because they believe if they push you away, Jaden will stay loyal to the family business." My heart sank. "So it's about control and power?" Mallory nodded. "Dad thinks Jaden will choose the family over you? And Leonard, well, he just enjoys the games." "Thanks for telling me," I said, squeezing her hand. "But this just makes everything even more complicated." "I'll help in any way I can," Mallory promised. "But I need to be careful. If Dad finds out I'm helping you—" "I understand," I assured her. "We need to be smart about this." Driving back home, I mulled over Mallory's words. Warren wasn't just worried about me as a person. He saw me as a threat to his control. And Leonard? He thrived on deceit and manipulation. Opening the front door, I found Jaden waiting, the worry lines on his forehead deepening. "What did Mallory say?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Warren and Uncle Leonard are working together. They see me as a threat. It's about control, Jaden. They fear losing you to anything outside their influence." Jaden's face darkened, anger flickering in his eyes. "I can't believe they're going this far." "We need to be strong," I said, taking his hand. "We need to stand together." Jaden nodded. "We will, Elena. We'll fight this. Together." Looking into his eyes, I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but we would face it side by side. We wouldn't let Warren's manipulation destroy us. A week passed, and the tension between Jaden and his family showed no signs of easing. I tried to focus on my work, but the anxiety lingered like a shadow. Every vibration of my phone made my heart skip, fearing another attack from Warren or Leonard. One evening, Jaden arrived home, looking more stressed than usual. "Dad's not stopping," he said, dropping his briefcase on the couch. "He's enlisted Uncle Leonard to dig up dirt on you." My stomach churned. "Great, just what we needed," I muttered, sinking into the chair. Jaden sat next to me. "We need to be careful, Elena. Leonard is known for his dirty tactics." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Mallory. "Heads up, Leonard and Dad are spreading rumors about you to the family. Stay strong." I showed the message to Jaden. "They're really pulling out all the stops." Jaden's face hardened. "I won't let them do this to you, to us." Just then, the doorbell rang. Jaden opened it to reveal Leonard standing there, a smug look on his face. "Hello, nephew," Leonard said smoothly. "Mind if I come in?" Jaden's jaw tightened. "What do you want, Leonard?" Leonard glanced at me, feigning surprise. "Oh, is this a bad time?" This isn't a social call, and you know it, I said, stepping forward to stand beside Jaden. Leonard smirked. Well, since you're here, Elena, let me be blunt. You're not welcome in our family. Get to the point, Leonard, Jaden snapped. Warren and I have been talking, Leonard continued, and we think it's in everyone's best interest if Elena steps away from the family and from you, Jaden. You can't be serious, Jaden said, his voice trembling with anger. Leonard shrugged. We're completely serious. She's a liability. The rumors, well, they're gaining traction. Even your mother is starting to have doubts. I felt a surge of anger. These lies won't destroy us, Leonard. We'll see about that, Leonard said, his eyes glinting. You might find that fighting against family is more than you can handle. Jaden took a step closer to Leonard. You're playing a dangerous game. I won't stand by and let you ruin our lives. Leonard chuckled. Family comes first, Jaden. Always has, always will. Think about it. With that, he turned and walked out. Jaden slammed the door shut, his face red with frustration. You okay? I asked, reaching for his hand. He shook his head. I hate them for this. How could they do this to their own family? We'll get through it, I assured him. We just need to stay one step ahead. The next few days were a blur of whispered conversations and sideways glances from Jaden's extended family. Rumors spread like wildfire, accusations about my past, lies about my intentions. Even at work, I could feel the cold stares from coworkers who'd heard the gossip. Meeting Mallory in secret became our only way to stay informed. They're painting you as a manipulative gold digger, she said one afternoon, her eyes filled with regret. They're relentless. But why? I asked, frustrated. Why go through so much trouble? They think it's the only way to keep control, she answered softly. They're trying to protect the family business. They don't care who gets hurt along the way. I won't let them win, Mallory, I vowed. The line between family and enemy had been drawn. Warren and Leonard's actions were setting the stage for a confrontation that was brewing just beneath the surface. Jaden and I were determined to stand united, even as the storm clouds gathered overhead. These battles weren't just about us anymore. They revealed the lengths people would go to for power and control. But no matter what, we would fight back together. The tension was almost unbearable. Each day at work was fraught with whispered rumors and sidelong glances. Jaden and I tried to keep our heads down, but the pressure was mounting. Warren and Leonard's influence had far-reaching consequences. Even Mallory started to distance herself, fearing repercussions. One night, Jaden came home looking exhausted. His tie was askew, and he threw his jacket over the chair. Dad ambushed me at the office today, he said, rubbing his temple. I approached him, concerned. What happened? He tried to interrogate me about our relationship. He's convinced you're hiding something. Jaden's voice was filled with frustration. Did you tell him anything? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Of course not. But he doesn't believe me. He's convinced you're not who you say you are. And Leonard? He's too good at what he does. We need to do something, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We can't just sit back and let them tear us apart. Jaden nodded. I know, but I feel stuck. Every time I try to talk to him, it just gets worse. The next morning, I decided I'd had enough. I texted Warren, asking for a meeting. Jaden was hesitant, but he finally agreed. Just be careful, he warned. I arrived at Warren's office, my heart pounding. The receptionist led me into a large, imposing room where Warren sat behind a massive desk. He didn't even look up as I entered. You wanted to see me? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Warren finally looked up, his gaze icy. So you've decided to confront the dragon in his den? I ignored his sarcasm. We need to put an end to this, Warren. Your manipulation is tearing us apart. He leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile curling his lips. I'm only protecting my family, something you know nothing about. You're not protecting anyone, I shot back. You're controlling and destroying relationships. Warren stood, his eyes flashing with anger. You think you can just come into my family and take what you want? You're nothing, a nobody. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I love Jaden, and he loves me. You can't change that with lies and manipulation. You're delusional, Warren sneered. Jaden will come around. He'll see the truth about you. He already knows the truth, I replied firmly, and he's chosen me. Warren's face darkened. You don't belong here. Leave now, and maybe things will settle down. Otherwise, you're going to regret you ever stepped into this family. I left his office with my heart racing, but my resolve strengthened. I wouldn't let Warren intimidate me. When I got home, Jaden was waiting. "How did it go?" he asked anxiously. "Not well," I admitted. "He's not backing down." Jaden paced the room, fists clenching and unclenching. "We can't keep living like this, Alina. Maybe we should take a break. Let things cool down." I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I need time to think," Jaden said, his voice breaking. "We're under so much pressure. I can't think straight." "Jaden, please," I pleaded. "Don't let them win. We can fight this together." "I don't know if I can," he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Alina." He left that night, deciding to stay at a friend's place for a while. As the door closed behind him, I felt a cold, numb sensation creeping over me. Warren's plan was working, and I was losing the one person who mattered most. Jaden's decision to take a break hit me like a ton of bricks. Each day without him was a struggle. The house felt empty and cold, every corner reminding me of what I was losing. I barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts about Warren and Leonard's relentless scheming. One evening, unable to sit idle any longer, I decided to dig through my own files and emails, hoping to find something to counter Warren and Leonard's lies. Hours passed with nothing. Frustration gnawed at me until I stumbled upon an email chain that caught my attention. Sent to an unfamiliar address, it was filled with malicious intent and vivid descriptions of plans to eliminate me from Jaden's life. My heart raced as I realized the sender was Leonard, and the recipient was Warren. The messages detailed their relentless plot to sow discord and manipulate Jaden. I immediately called Mallory, my voice shaking. "Mallory, I found something. You have to see it." We met at a coffee shop, and I showed her the emails on my laptop. Her face paled as she read through them. This is insane, Alina. They're worse than I thought." "We have to show this to Jaden," I said. Mallory nodded. "Let me reach out to him. Maybe he'll listen to me." Later that evening, Mallory texted me, "Jaden's coming over. Be ready." When Jaden arrived, his face was tense and tired. "Mallory said you found something?" I nodded, leading him to the kitchen where my laptop was set up. "It's better if you see for yourself." He read the emails, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, then to a slow-burning rage. "These are from Dad and Leonard? About you?" "Yes," I said softly. "They've been manipulating you, Jaden. This is proof." Jaden's hands trembled as he closed the laptop. "All this time, I can't believe they would go this far." I took a step towards him. "Jaden, we can fight this together, but you need to see what they're really doing." He nodded, his eyes brimming with determination. "You're right. We need to confront them. This can't go on." We decided to face Warren and Leonard together, arranging a meeting at Warren's house. Mallory insisted on coming along for support. The tension as we walked into the house was palpable. Warren and Leonard sat in the living room, looking smug and confident. "So you've come to your senses, Jaden?" Warren asked, playing on his lips. A sneer playing on his lips. Jaden's voice was firm. "We know what you've been doing, Dad, manipulating, trying to tear us apart." Warren's expression didn't falter. "I've done what's best for you, Jaden." Jaden slammed the laptop on the table, opening the incriminating emails. "This is what's best for me? Lies and manipulation?" Leonard leaned forward, his smile fading. "You don't understand." "No, you don't understand," Jaden interrupted. "You've lost my trust, and you won't get it back." Warren's eyes narrowed. "Elena is poisoning you against us." "This is your doing, not hers," Jaden shot back. "We're done with your games." Mallory finally stepped forward, her voice steady. "I support Jaden and Elena. You two are toxic, and it's time we all saw it." Warren's face contorted with fury, but he said nothing. Jaden took my hand, his grip reassuring. "We're leaving, and we won't be coming back." As we walked out, I felt a surge of relief. Warren and Leonard's hold on Jaden had broken, and together we were stronger. It wouldn't be easy, but we had exposed their deceit. The road to healing had begun, and for the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful about the future. Jaden and I spent the next few days gathering our strength. We knew the confrontation had just begun. Armed with the truth, we set a plan in motion to reveal Warren and Leonard's deceit to the entire family. We decided to call a family meeting at Jaden's parents' house, ensuring that the extended family would be present. Jaden invited everyone, making it clear that this was a matter of urgency. Warren and Leonard might have thought they could manipulate the situation, but this time we would control the narrative. The family gathered in the large living room, filled with murmurs of confusion and curiosity. Warren and Leonard sat in their usual chairs, their faces steely and unreadable. Jaden stood beside me, gripping my hand for support. "Thank you all for coming," Jaden began, his voice strong. "We have something important to discuss. For weeks, Elena and I have been victims of lies and manipulation orchestrated by my father and uncle." A murmur ran through the room. Warren leaned forward, a sneer on his face. "This again, Jaden? Haven't we had enough of this nonsense?" "It's not nonsense," Jaden replied, his voice unwavering. He turned to Mallory, who stood up and began playing the emails on the big screen. Silence fell over the room as Leonard's and Warren's voices filled the room, their cold, calculating words undeniable. The shock on the family's faces was evident, and whispers of disbelief spread like wildfire. "How could you do this?" Jaden's aunt muttered, glaring at Warren. Warren's face turned red with rage. "You think this proves anything? It's all taken out of context." "Context," Jaden's voice rose. "You manipulated and lied to push Elena out of my life. This isn't love or protection, it's control and deceit." Leonard tried to interject. "We were protecting the family, Jaden. Sometimes harsh measures are necessary." "Harsh measures?" Mallory snapped. "This is cruelty, plain and simple." Jaden's mother, Diana, stood up, her face pale. "Warren, is this true? Have you been lying to all of us?" Warren looked around, his confidence wavering. "I did what I thought was right, but Jaden, he's blinded by her. She's not one of us." Jaden's voice shook with emotion. "Elena is more family to me than you've ever been since this started. She didn't deserve any of this." Warren stuttered, but Jaden cut him off. "Enough. I'm done with your lies. This ends now." The room was tense, every eye on Warren and Leonard. Jaden turned to the family. "From this day forward, we cut ties with them. Their influence ends here. We rebuild without lies." Diana, with tears in her eyes, nodded. "I'm so sorry, Jaden, Elena. I didn't know it had gone this far." Jaden squeezed my hand. "We're moving forward as a family, but only with those who support us, who value truth." Warren stood up, his face contorted with fury. "You're making a big mistake, Jaden." "No," Jaden replied, his voice steady. "For the first time, I'm making the right choice." As Warren and Leonard left the room, the weight of their influence seemed to lift. The family began to rally around us, offering apologies and support. Jaden drew me close, his arm around my shoulders. "We did it," I whispered, feeling a sense of relief washing over me. Jaden nodded, his eyes determined. "This is just the beginning. Together, we can face anything." The reckoning had come, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, we knew we'd taken the first step towards a future free from deceit. With every obstacle overcome, our bond grew stronger, proving that love and truth would always prevail. As the door closed behind Warren and Leonard, a heavy silence descended on the room. The air felt charged with the weight of everything that had happened. Jaden and I stood together, still processing the enormity of what we'd just done. Diana approached us, her face lined with worry. "Jaden, Elena, I had no idea they were capable of this. I'm so sorry." Jaden sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly for the first time in weeks. "It's not your fault, Mom, but we need to move forward." Mallory stepped in, her eyes resolute. "Rebuilding won't be easy, but we can do it, together." Jaden nodded. "First, we need to make sure Warren and Leonard can't harm us any further. Their influence needs to end, both in the family and in the business." I turned to Jaden, my voice steady. "We will, Jaden. We'll figure this out." The next morning, Jaden and I began the process of distancing ourselves from Warren's business. It was clear that to reclaim our lives, we needed to establish independence. I decided to dive back into my marketing career, focusing on what I had built for myself before all this chaos. Meanwhile, Jaden started exploring opportunities to start his own enterprise. Each evening, we sat together, discussing ideas, plans, and the future we envisioned without the shadow of Warren's control. One late afternoon, Jaden came home, his face lit with excitement. "I found a potential investor for a new project. This could be a fresh start for us." I smiled, proud of his determination. "That's amazing, Jaden. Let's make it happen." We met the investor, an old friend of Jaden's, who was eager to support his vision. As plans solidified, it felt like a burden lifting off our shoulders, replaced by a sense of purpose and hope. Amidst all this, one evening, Diana called, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. "Jaden, I think it's time we talked about your father. I need to explain why he's become so bitter." Jaden and I visited Diana the following weekend. She welcomed us into the home that had seen so much turmoil, her expression both sad and determined. "Warren wasn't always like this," Diana began, her voice soft. "There was a time when he was full of hope, just like you, Jaden. But life has a way of hardening people." "What changed him?" Jaden asked, leaning forward. Diana took a deep breath. It was Leonard's return from overseas. Warren had always felt a duty to protect the family, but Leonard's influence made it worse. He stirred up old insecurities, convinced Warren that everyone was out to take from him. It turned him into this controlling figure obsessed with power. I listened, feeling a pang of empathy despite everything Warren had done. "That kind of fear can destroy people," I said quietly. "Yes," Diana agreed. Doubt and fear consumed him, and he took it out on those he should have loved the most. Jaden's face was filled with a mix of anger and sadness. "He's hurt us all so much." "I know," Diana said, tears in her eyes. "But understanding his past doesn't excuse his actions. It just helps us see the full picture." Jaden nodded, reaching for my hand. "We won't let his past dictate our future. We're carving out our own path now." In the weeks that followed, Jaden's new venture began to take shape. We poured our energy into creating a future built on trust and mutual support. Mallory, freed from Warren's oppressive influence, found her own voice, contributing to the family in ways she'd been too scared to before. Despite the confrontation and the revelations, healing had begun. Warren and Leonard's fall from power left a void, but it also provided an opportunity for growth. We were no longer defined by the bitterness that had once threatened to tear us apart. As Jaden and I stood together, looking towards the horizon, we knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, it felt like our own. And that made all the difference. Warren's fall was more profound than anyone could have anticipated. Once a titan of influence, he now found himself ostracized by both his immediate and extended family. Word of his and Leonard's manipulations spread quickly, turning allies into skeptics and friends into critics. Jaden and I watched from a distance as Warren's once impenetrable empire began to crumble. He had alienated everyone who mattered, and now he was paying the price. It was hard not to feel a mix of satisfaction and pity. One evening, as we were settling into our new routine, Jaden received an unexpected call from his mother. Her voice was heavy with concern. "Jaden, it's your father. He's not handling this well. Can you come over?" Jaden looked at me, uncertainty in his eyes. "Should we go?" I nodded. "He's still your father. Let's see what's going on." When we arrived, Diana led us into the living room where Warren sat, staring blankly at the wall. His once sharp and commanding demeanor was now a shadow of its former self. "Jaden, Elena," Warren said, his voice lifeless. "I suppose you've come to see the defeated king." "Dad," Jaden began, almost pleading, "this didn't have to be this way. You pushed everyone away." Warren's eyes hardened momentarily. "I did what I thought was right, for the family." "And look where it's gotten you," I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "You hurt so many people, including your own children." Diana touched Warren's arm gently. "It's time to let go of this thirst for control, Warren. It's destroying you." For a moment, the old Warren seemed to surface, his eyes flashing with the stubborn pride that had defined him for so long. But it faded quickly, leaving behind a man broken by his own machinations. Jaden took a deep breath. "Dad, you need to understand that we're moving forward without your influence. We're creating our own lives now." Warren looked at Jaden, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time in years. "I just wanted to protect you." "By manipulating and deceiving us?" Jaden shook his head. "That's not protection, Dad. That's control, and it's over." We left Warren's house that evening with a sense of finality. The old power structures had fallen, and in their place, we were building something new and honest. Mallory, emboldened by the changes, finally stepped out of the shadows. She openly supported Jaden, cutting ties with the toxic patriarchy that had held them captive for so long. Her transformation was inspiring, and it further solidified our resolve to pursue a life free from manipulation. Jaden's new business started to gain traction, and my career continued to flourish. We found a balance, supporting each other in ways that strengthened our relationship. Trust and communication became the cornerstones of our lives, our bond reaffirmed through every challenge we faced. One crisp autumn afternoon, Jaden and I sat in our new home, planning our future. The past months had been a whirlwind, but we had emerged stronger and more united. "Do you think he'll ever change?" I asked, referring to Warren. Jaden looked thoughtful. "I don't know, but we can't wait around for him to. We have our own lives to lead." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and peace. "We've come a long way, Jaden." "Yes, we have," he agreed, taking my hand in his. "And we'll keep moving forward, no matter what." The journey had been tumultuous, but we had found our footing. We reclaimed our lives from under Warren's shadow, turning manipulation and deceit into lessons of resilience and hope. The future was ours, a tapestry of love, trust, and unbreakable unity, free from the venom of a bitter lineage. Together, we had triumphed. I smoothed my dress for the 100th time, scrutinizing my reflection in the full-length mirror. The ivory silk clung to my curves, a perfect fit for tomorrow's wedding. My wedding. A soft knock at the door startled me from my reverie. "Come in," I called, expecting my maid of honor with a last-minute checklist. The door creaked open, and my heart sank. It wasn't best friend, but my younger half-sister, Lydia. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally perfect makeup smudged. "Grace," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." I steeled myself, plastering on a smile. "Lydia, what a surprise. I thought you weren't coming until tomorrow." She stepped into the room, wringing her hands. "I couldn't wait. There's something you need to know." A chill ran down my spine. "What is it?" Lydia took a deep breath. "It's about Trevor." My fiancé's name on her lips sent warning bells ringing in my head. "What about Trevor?" "We've been seeing each other," she said, her eyes fixed on the floor. "For over a year now." The room spun. I gripped the edge of my vanity to steady myself. "You're lying," I spat. "This is my wedding we're talking about." Lydia's head snapped up, her eyes flashing. "I wish I was lying, Grace, but it's true. Ask him yourself." I fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking as I dialed Trevor's number. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, beautiful. Getting cold feet?" His voice was light, teasing. "Trevor," I said, my voice tight. "Is it true? Have you been seeing Lydia?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. When he finally spoke, his words were careful, measured. "Grace, I can explain. It's not what you think." I ended the call, my vision blurring with unshed tears. Lydia stood there watching me, her expression a mix of guilt and something else. "Triumph? Why?" I choked out. "Why would you do this to me?" Lydia's face crumpled. "I'm sorry, Grace. I never meant for it to happen. It just did." I laughed bitterly. "Things don't just happen, Lydia. You made a choice. Both of you did." She reached out to touch my arm, but I jerked away. "Don't," I warned. "Don't you dare try to comfort me." A knock at the door interrupted us. My mother's voice drifted through the wood. "Grace? Lydia? Is everything all right in there?" I wiped my eyes hastily, clearing my throat. "Everything's fine, Mom. We'll be out in a minute." Lydia's eyes widened. "You're not going to tell her?" I fixed her with a steely gaze. "Oh, I'm going to tell her. I'm going to tell everyone, but first I need to deal with Trevor." I strode to the door, yanking it open. My mother stood there, concern etched on her face. "Grace, what's wrong?" I brushed past her, my mind set on one goal. "The wedding's off," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I need to see Trevor." As I marched down the hallway, I heard Lydia's frantic whispers to our mother, followed by a gasp of shock. But I didn't look back. My world was crumbling around me, but I'd be damned if I'd let them see me fall apart. I burst into Trevor's study without knocking. He looked up from his desk, surprise quickly replaced by guilt on his handsome face. "Grace," he started, rising to his feet. "Let me explain." I held up a hand, silencing him. "Save it, Trevor. I don't want to hear your excuses." He moved around the desk, reaching for me. "It was just a fling, Grace. It doesn't mean anything." I stepped back, my anger rising. "A fling? With my sister? For over a year?" I shook my head in disbelief. "You've turned our entire relationship into a lie." Trevor's face hardened. "Don't be dramatic, Grace. These things happen. We can work through this." I slipped the engagement ring off my finger, tossing it onto his desk. "No, Trevor. We can't. It's over." As I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm. "Think about what you're doing, Grace. Think Think about the scandal, the gossip. Is that what you want? I wrenched my arm free, fixing him with a glare that could freeze hell itself. What I want, I said slowly, is for you to go to hell. With that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, my legs suddenly weak. The weight of what had just happened crashed over me like a tidal wave. My wedding was off. My fiancé had betrayed me. My sister had betrayed me. And tomorrow I'd have to face a house full of guests, all expecting a joyous celebration. I straightened up, squaring my shoulders. I was Grace Granger, and I'd be damned if I'd let them see me broken. As I walked back to my room, one thought burned in my mind. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I spent the night pacing my room, my mind a whirlwind of anger and betrayal. As dawn broke, I knew I couldn't face the arriving guests or deal with canceling the wedding alone. I needed backup. With trembling hands, I dialed Peter's number. My old colleague and friend answered on the third ring, his voice groggy with sleep. Grace, what's wrong? Peter, I need your help. The wedding's off. Trevor's been cheating on me with Lydia. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. I'll be there in 20 minutes. True to his word, Peter arrived just as I finished throwing some clothes into a suitcase. His familiar face, etched with concern, was a welcome sight. What do you need me to do? He asked, no preamble necessary. Help me face the music, I said, squaring my shoulders. We need to tell the guests and cancel everything. As we descended the stairs, my mother's shrill voice echoed from the living room. Grace Elizabeth Granger! You get down here this instant! I exchanged a glance with Peter before stepping into the lion's den. Mom stood in the center of the room, her face a mask of fury. Trevor lounged on the sofa, looking more annoyed than remorseful. Lydia huddled in a corner, eyes red and puffy. What is the meaning of this? Mom demanded. Trevor tells me you're calling off the wedding. Have you lost your mind? I felt Peter's steadying presence behind me as I faced my mother. No, Mom. I've finally come to my senses. The wedding's off because Trevor's been cheating on me with Lydia for over a year. Mom's face paled, her gaze darting between Trevor and Lydia. Is this true? Trevor stood, straightening his jacket. Now, Beverly, let's not blow this out of proportion. It was just a little indiscretion, hardly worth canceling a wedding over. I couldn't believe my ears. A little indiscretion? You've been sleeping with my sister. Half-sister, Lydia mumbled, earning glares from everyone in the room. Mom turned on Lydia, her voice ice-cold. You. How could you do this to your sister? Oh, spare me the righteous indignation, Mom, I snapped. You're more worried about the scandal than my feelings. That's not true, Mom protested, but her eyes betrayed her. Trevor stepped towards me, his charm cranked up to 11. Grace, darling, let's talk about this rationally. Think about all we've invested in this wedding and our future. We can work through this. I felt my resolve wavering for a moment, years of conditioning kicking in. Then I felt Peter's hand on my shoulder, grounding me. No, Trevor, I said firmly. We can't. It's over. Trevor's face darkened. You're making a big mistake, Grace. Think about your career, your reputation. Do you really want to be known as the jilted bride? Better that than the fool who married a cheater, I retorted. Lydia suddenly sprang to life, rushing towards me. Grace, please, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. You have to believe me. I stepped back, bumping into Peter. Don't touch me, Lydia. You're dead to me. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Mom looked between us, her face a mix of shock and disappointment. What are we going to tell people? She finally asked. I turned to Peter. That's where you come in. Can you help me notify the guests and cancel the arrangements? He nodded, squeezing my shoulder. Of course, whatever you need. As Peter and I turned to leave, Trevor called out, Grace, don't do this. You're throwing away everything we've built. I paused at the doorway, looking back at the wreckage of my life. My cheating fiancé, my traitorous sister, my image-obsessed mother. In that moment, I knew I needed to escape, to find myself again. No, Trevor, I said quietly. I'm finally building something real, a life without lies. With that, I walked out, Peter by my side, leaving behind the shattered remains of my old life. As we stepped into the sunlight, I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. Where to now? Peter asked gently. I thought for a moment, then made a decision that would change everything. Take me to my childhood home. It's time I faced some old ghosts. The drive to my childhood home was silent, the weight of recent events hanging heavy between Peter and me. As we pulled up to the weathered Victorian house, my stomach churned with a mix of dread and nostalgia. "You sure about this, Grace?" Peter asked, concern etching his features. I nodded, steeling myself. "I need to face this head-on." The front door creaked open before we reached it, revealing my mother, Beverly Quinn, looking as formidable as ever in her tailored suit. "Well, well," she drawled, eyeing us critically. "The prodigal daughter returns." I bit back a retort, reminding myself why I was here. "Hello, Mom. Can we talk?" She stepped aside, gesturing us in with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. The house smelled the same, a mix of lemon polish and stale perfume that instantly transported me back to my tumultuous teenage years. We settled in the living room, the tension palpable. Peter excused himself to make coffee, leaving me alone with my mother. "So," Beverly began, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "I hear congratulations are in order. You've managed to spectacularly implode your wedding and your relationship in one fell swoop." I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I didn't come here for your judgment, Mom. I came because I need. "What?" she pressed, leaning forward. "What could you possibly need from me after all these years?" The words stuck in my throat, but I forced them out. "Advice. How did you do it? How did you move on after Dad's betrayal?" Beverly's eyes widened, genuine surprise replacing her usual mask of disdain. For a moment I saw a flicker of the woman she used to be, before bitterness and resentment had taken hold. "Oh, Grace," she sighed, her shoulders sagging. "I didn't. I never moved on. I let it consume me, define me, and look where that got us." Her unexpected honesty caught me off guard. "But you seemed so strong, so unaffected." She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "That was the greatest lie of all. I was broken, and instead of putting myself back together, I let the broken pieces cut everyone around me, especially you and Lydia." As if summoned by her name, the front door burst open, and Lydia stormed in, her face a storm of emotions. "How dare you run away like that?" she shouted, ignoring our mother completely. "We weren't finished talking." I stood, anger flaring anew. "There's nothing left to say, Lydia. You made your choice." "Girls, please," Beverly interjected, but we both ignored her. Lydia advanced, her voice rising. "You always do this. Run away when things get tough. You ran from Dad, you ran from Mom, and now you're running from me and Trevor?" "I'm not running," I shot back. "I'm finally standing my ground." "Enough!" Beverly's voice cracked like a whip, silencing us both. "It looks like history is repeating itself, dear. The same old patterns, the same old pain." I turned to her, fury building. "I'm nothing like you, Mom. I won't let this define me." Beverly's eyes softened, surprising me again. "Good. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say." Lydia scoffed, drawing our attention back to her. "Oh, please. You're more like her than you know, Grace. Always playing the victim. Always thinking you're better than everyone else." "That's rich coming from you," I spat. "You've spent your entire life trying to tear me down out of jealousy." "Jealousy?" Lydia laughed bitterly. "You have no idea what I've been through, what I've had to do to survive in this family." "Then enlighten me," I challenged, stepping closer. "What could possibly justify betraying your own sister?" Lydia's face contorted, a mix of pain and rage. "You want the truth? Fine. I slept with Trevor because I wanted to hurt you. I wanted you to feel just a fraction of the pain I've felt living in your shadow all these years." Her words hit me like a physical blow, leaving me breathless. In that moment, I saw the depth of her resentment, the years of pent-up anger and hurt. Beverly stood, moving between us. "It looks like we all have some hard truths to face. The question is, are we brave enough to do it?" As I looked from my mother to my sister, I realized this was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come, and it would either tear us apart forever or forge a new, stronger bond. "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady. "Let's lay it all out on the table. No more lies, no more secrets." Lydia's eyes narrowed, a challenge in her gaze. "Be careful what you wish for, sister dear. You might not like what you hear." The tension in the room was suffocating as Lydia, Mom, and I faced each other, years of unspoken resentment hanging between us. Peter had wisely retreated to the kitchen, leaving us to our family drama. "You want the truth?" Lydia spat, her eyes blazing. "Fine. I'm here because I need money. The inheritance Dad left me is gone, and I'm drowning in debt." I felt a surge of bitter satisfaction. So sleeping with Trevor wasn't just about hurting me. You were after his money too. Lydia's face flushed with anger. Don't you dare judge me. You have no idea what it's like to struggle while watching your perfect sister sail through life. Girls, please, Mom interjected, but we ignored her. Struggle? I laughed incredulously. You've had every advantage, Lydia. What could you possibly be struggling with? Lydia's eyes darted to Mom, then back to me. You really want to know? I've been paying for Mom's medical treatments for the past year. Treatments she's been hiding from you. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I turned to Mom, searching her face for confirmation. What treatments? What is she talking about? Mom sank into her chair, suddenly looking every bit her 60 years. I didn't want to worry you, Grace. You were so busy with your career and the wedding. I'm your daughter, I cried, feeling the sting of betrayal anew. How could you keep this from me? Because she knew you'd try to fix everything like always, Lydia sneered. Saint Grace to the rescue. I whirled on her. And you've been paying for her treatments? With what money? Lydia's defiant expression crumbled. I may have borrowed against the house. Dad's house. The implications hit me like a freight train. Our childhood home, the only tangible connection we had left to our father, was at risk because of Lydia's actions. You what? I breathed, struggling to process this new betrayal. I had no choice, Lydia shouted, tears streaming down her face. Mom needed the treatments, and you were too caught up in your perfect life to notice anything was wrong. I felt like I was drowning, overwhelmed by the cascade of revelations. Why didn't either of you come to me? I could have helped. Because we didn't want to be another burden on your shoulders, Mom said softly. You've always carried so much, Grace. We thought we could handle this on our own. The irony of their misguided attempt to protect me wasn't lost on me. All these years, I'd been maintaining a facade of perfection, thinking it would somehow shield my family from pain. Instead, it had driven us further apart. So what now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The treatments, the house, what are we going to do? Lydia laughed bitterly. That's why I came clean about Trevor. I thought if I ruined your wedding, you'd be so angry you'd pay me off to leave you alone. I could use that money to save the house. The calculated cruelty of her plan stunned me into silence. This was my sister, my flesh and blood, admitting she'd deliberately set out to destroy my happiness for financial gain. Oh, Lydia, Mom sighed, shaking her head. What have we become? I stood up abruptly, needing space to think. I need some air. As I headed for the door, Lydia called out, her voice tinged with desperation. Grace, wait! I'm sorry. I know it was wrong, but I didn't know what else to do. Please, help us. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, the weight of their expectations, their needs pressed down on me. Part of me wanted to run, to leave this mess behind and start fresh somewhere new. But another part, the part that had always felt responsible for holding this family together, wouldn't let me walk away. I turned back, meeting their anxious gazes. I'll help, I said slowly, but on my terms. No more lies, no more secrets. We deal with this together, as a family, or not at all. The relief on their faces was palpable, but I felt no satisfaction. As I stepped outside, drawing in a deep breath of cool air, I knew that the real challenge was just beginning. Saving our childhood home, dealing with Mom's illness, confronting the web of lies we'd all woven, it would take every ounce of strength I had. But as I stood there, watching the sun set over the neighborhood where I'd grown up, I made a silent vow. I would find a way through this mess, not just for my family, but for myself. It was time to rewrite our story, to break the cycle of betrayal and resentment that had defined us for too long. With renewed determination, I turned back to the house, ready to face whatever came next. The storm was far from over, but for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope that we might weather it together. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose. I'd promised to help my family, but I needed answers first. While Mom and Lydia slept, I slipped into Dad's old study, a room that had remained largely untouched since his death. The musty smell of old books and leather enveloped me as I entered. I ran my fingers along the spines of his law books, remembering how I'd once dreamed of following in his footsteps. Now, I was here to uncover the truth he'd left behind. I started rifling through his desk drawers, searching for any clue that might shed light on our family's tangled history. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of old files, I found a small, ornate box. My heart raced as I lifted the lid. Inside was a letter, yellowed with age, addressed to me in Dad's familiar handwriting. With trembling hands, I unfolded it and began to read. My dearest Grace, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you've finally started asking the right questions. I've carried the weight of our family's secrets for too long, and it's time you knew the truth. Lydia has always struggled with feeling second best. I fear her resentment will one day pull you and her apart, but the roots of her anger go deeper than you know. The truth is, Lydia isn't your half-sister. She's your full sister, born from an affair your mother had early in our marriage. I chose to raise her as my own, but the strain of this secret tore our family apart. Your mother's guilt, my resentment, and Lydia's constant feeling of not belonging, it all stems from this. I've tried to compensate by favoring you, Grace, but I see now that I've only made things worse. I'm sorry for the burden this knowledge will place on you, but you've always been the strong one, the peacemaker. I hope that with this truth, you can find a way to heal our family's wounds. Forgive us, Grace, and help Lydia find her place in this world. With all my love, Dad. I sat back, stunned. The letter slipped from my fingers, floating to the floor like a fallen leaf. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about myself, had just been turned upside down. Suddenly, Lydia's lifelong resentment made sense. Her desperate attempts to win Mom's approval, her jealousy of my relationship with Dad, it all clicked into place. Grace? Lydia's voice startled me. She stood in the doorway, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. What are you doing in here? I couldn't speak. I simply handed her the letter, watching as the color drained from her face as she read. Is this true? She whispered, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. I nodded, my own vision blurring. It explains so much, doesn't it? Lydia sank to the floor, the letter clutched to her chest. All these years, I thought I was the outsider, the unwanted one, but I was just lost. I moved to sit beside her, tentatively putting an arm around her shoulders. For the first time in years, she didn't pull away. We've both been lost, Lydia, I said softly. Maybe it's time we found our way back to each other. She looked at me, a mix of hope and fear in her eyes. How can you even look at me after everything I've done? I took a deep breath, weighing my next words carefully. Because you're my sister, my full sister, and it's time we stopped letting the past define us. Lydia nodded, wiping her eyes. What do we do now? I stood up, offering her my hand. First we talk to Mom, then we figure out how to save the house and get you both the help you need. Together. As Lydia took my hand, I felt a shift in the air between us. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with painful conversations and hard truths. But for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. We walked out of the study side by side, ready to face our mother and the future, whatever it might hold. The web of lies that had entangled our family for so long was finally beginning to unravel. It was up to us now to weave something new from the threads that remained. The tension in the air was palpable as we gathered around the dining table that evening. Mom had insisted on a family dinner, a futile attempt at normalcy amidst the chaos of our lives. Peter had excused himself, sensing the impending storm. I clutched Dad's letter in my pocket, its weight a constant reminder of the truth I now carried. Lydia sat across from me, her eyes darting nervously between Mom and me. She knew what was coming. Before we eat, I began, my voice steadier than I felt, there's something we need to discuss. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Grace, please, can't we just have one peaceful meal? No, Mom, we can't keep burying the truth. It's time we faced it head on. I pulled out the letter, smoothing it on the table. I found this in Dad's study. It explains everything. As I read the letter aloud, the color drained from Mom's face. Lydia's hands trembled, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the table. When I finished, the silence was deafening. Then Mom broke down, years of guilt pouring out in heaving sobs. I'm so sorry, she wept. I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I was protecting you both. Lydia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Protecting us? You've been lying to us our entire lives. I reached out to her, but she recoiled. Lydia, please, we can work through this together. Her laugh was bitter, tinged with hysteria. Together? All these years, and you still couldn't be happy for me. You had everything, Dad's love, Mom's attention, success in your career. What did I have? Scraps. That's not true, I protested, but the words felt hollow even to me. Isn't it? Lydia's eyes blazed with a mixture of pain and fury. You were always the golden child, Grace. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect fiancé. And what was I? The family disappointment. Mom tried to interject, but Lydia silenced her with a glare. Don't. You don't get to play the victim here. You're the one who started all of this with your affair. I stood, trying to defuse the situation. Lydia, I know you're hurt, but... Hurt? She scoffed. I'm way past hurt, Grace. I'm done. Done with this family. Done with your condescension. Done with living in your shadow. She stormed towards the door, but I couldn't let her leave like this. I grabbed her arm, and suddenly, years of pent-up rage exploded. Lydia whirled around, her hand connecting with my cheek in a resounding slap. The shock of it sent me stumbling backward. Mom screamed, rushing to my side, but I barely heard her. All I could focus on was Lydia's face, contorted with a mixture of satisfaction and horror at what she'd done. Lydia, I whispered, my cheek stinging, what have we become? For a moment I saw a flicker of the sister I once knew in her eyes. Then it vanished, replaced by cold determination. I'll tell you what I've become, she said, her voice low and dangerous. I've become someone who's done playing by your rules. You think you can swoop in and fix everything with your perfect Grace Granger touch? Well, you can't fix this. She reached into her purse, pulling out a stack of papers. You see these? This is my plan to take over Dad's company. The company you never cared about, but that I've been working my ass off in for years. And now, it's going to be mine. I stared at her, stunned. What are you talking about? Lydia's smile was cruel. Oh, sister dear, did you really think I was just sitting around feeling sorry for myself all these years? I've been planning, waiting for the right moment. And now, thanks to your little revelation, I have everything I need to discredit you and take what's rightfully mine. Mom gasped, Lydia, you can't be serious. Watch me, Lydia snarled, heading for the door. It's time I made my own light instead of living in Grace's shadow. As the door slammed behind her, I sank to my knees, the weight of everything crashing down on me. I had thought the truth would heal us, but instead, it had torn us apart in ways I never imagined possible. Mom's hand on my shoulder felt like a lead weight. Grace, what are we going to do? I looked up at her, feeling more lost than I ever had in my life. I don't know, Mom. I really don't know. The morning after Lydia's explosive revelation, I woke to a flurry of missed calls and urgent messages. My head pounded as I scrolled through them, each one more alarming than the last. Lydia had wasted no time in setting her plan in motion. I rushed to the family company's headquarters, my stomach churning with dread. As I stepped into the lobby, all eyes turned to me. Whispers followed in my wake, and I caught snippets of conversation that made my blood run cold. Did you hear? Grace Granger's been embezzling. I always knew there was something off about her. I pushed past them, heading straight for the boardroom. As I burst through the doors, I found Lydia holding court, surrounded by the board members. Her eyes gleamed with triumph as she saw me. Ah, Grace. How kind of you to join us, she purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. We were just discussing your creative accounting practices. I felt the blood drain from my face. What are you talking about? Lydia smiled, sliding a stack of documents across the table. These financial records show some very interesting transfers from the company accounts to your personal ones. Care to explain? I leafed through the papers, my hands shaking. The numbers were all wrong, doctored to make it look like I'd been siphoning funds for years. This is impossible. I've never... Oh, come now, Grace, Lydia interrupted. We all know how hard you've worked. Is it so surprising that you'd want to ensure your own financial security? The board members murmured among themselves, their faces a mix of disappointment and anger. I looked to Mr. Jameson, Dad's old friend and my longtime mentor on the board. His eyes were filled with sadness as he shook his head. Grace, I'm sorry, but given the evidence, we have no choice but to suspend you pending a full investigation. The room spun around me. This couldn't be happening. You can't seriously believe this. Lydia, tell them the truth. Lydia's face hardened. I am telling the truth, Grace. For once in your life, you're not going to be able to talk your way out of this. As security escorted me from the building, I saw Mom waiting in the parking lot, her face etched with worry. Grace, what's happening? Lydia called, said something about you being in trouble. I couldn't bring myself to explain. Instead, I collapsed into her arms, sobbing like I hadn't since I was a child. Mom held me tight, stroking my hair. "Oh, my sweet girl," she whispered. "What have we done to each other?" Back at home, I paced the living room, my mind racing. Peter arrived, his face grim as I filled him in on Lydia's machinations. "We need to fight this, Grace," he insisted. "There must be a way to prove your innocence." I shook my head, feeling defeated. "How? Lydia's had years to plan this. She knows all our weaknesses, all our secrets. She's always been in my shadow, and now she's found a way to make her own light, by extinguishing mine." Mom, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "No, Grace, you can't give up. You're stronger than this, stronger than Lydia, stronger than me. You've always been the one to hold this family together." Her words sparked something in me, a flicker of the fire I'd thought Lydia had extinguished. I stood straighter, my resolve hardening. "You're right, Mom. I've spent my whole life trying to be perfect, to make everyone happy. But now? Now it's time to fight fire with fire." I turned to Peter, a plan forming in my mind. "I need your help. We're going to dig into every corner of this company, every decision Lydia's made. If she wants to play dirty, she's about to learn that two can play at that game." As I spoke, I felt a shift within me. The old Grace, the peacemaker, the perfect daughter, was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone forged in the crucible of betrayal and deceit. Lydia thought she'd won, that she'd finally stepped out of my shadow. But she was about to learn a harsh truth. Sometimes it's the shadows you need to fear the most. I picked up my phone, my fingers flying over the keys as I started to put my plan into action. "Lydia, you've chosen darkness over and over again. Now it's time you learned what real darkness looks like." As I hit send on the message, I felt a chill run down my spine. There was no going back now. The final showdown was about to begin, and only one of us would emerge victorious. The boardroom fell silent as I strode in, my heels echoing on the polished floor. Lydia's smug smile faltered as she saw the determination in my eyes. I'd spent the last week gathering evidence, calling in favors, and preparing for this moment. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," I began, my voice steady, "I'm here to set the record straight." I laid out the truth, piece by damning piece. The doctored financial records Lydia had presented, I'd traced them back to her own computer. The supposed embezzlement, a clever manipulation of numbers that, when unraveled, revealed Lydia's own misappropriation of funds. As I spoke, I watched the color drain from Lydia's face. The board members leaned in, their expressions shifting from skepticism to shock. "But why?" Mr. Jameson asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Lydia, why would you do this?" Lydia's composure cracked. "Because I deserved it," she screamed, her eyes wild. "I've worked just as hard as Grace, but she always got the praise, the recognition. It was my turn." In that moment, I saw my sister for who she truly was, a wound-desperate woman who'd let her resentment consume her. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort her as I had when we were children. But I knew we were past that now. "Lydia," I said softly, "you've chosen darkness over and over again. But it didn't have to be this way. We could have built something together, supported each other." She laughed bitterly. "Always the perfect sister, aren't you, Grace? Even now, you think you can fix everything." "No," I replied, shaking my head. "I can't fix this, but I can move forward." I turned to the board. "I'm stepping down from my position in the company. It's time for me to start a new chapter." Gasps filled the room. Mr. Jameson stood, protesting. "Grace, you can't leave. The company needs you." I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "The company will be fine. It's time I wrote my own story." As I walked out of the boardroom, leaving behind the shocked faces and Lydia's defeated form, I felt a sense of liberation I hadn't experienced in years. Mom was waiting for me in the lobby, her eyes questioning. "It's done," I told her. "I've cleared my name, but I'm leaving the company." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Where will you go?" I took a deep breath, realizing I hadn't thought that far ahead. "I don't know yet, but for the first time in my life, that uncertainty doesn't terrify me." Mom squeezed my hand. "Maybe this time you'll write your own story without the weight of our family's expectations." As we stepped out into the sunlight, I saw Peter waiting by his car. He'd been my rock through this ordeal, and I felt a flutter in my chest as our eyes met. ready for a new adventure?" he asked, a smile playing on his lips. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. More than ready. As we drove away from the building that had been the center of my world for so long, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The betrayals, the lies, the pain, they had all shaped me, but they didn't define me. I thought of Lydia, hoping that one day she might find peace. I thought of Trevor, grateful that his betrayal had freed me from a life that wasn't truly mine. And I thought of Dad, wishing he could see the strength I'd found in myself. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time I was excited about the possibilities. I'd spent so long trying to be the perfect daughter, sister, and fiancée that I'd lost sight of who I really was. Now, as the city faded in the rearview mirror, I felt like I was finally coming home to myself. The web of lies that had entangled my family for so long was broken, and in its place I was weaving a new tapestry, one of honesty, self-discovery, and hope. "So," Peter asked, glancing at me, "where to?" I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face and the promise of a new beginning in my heart. "Anywhere," I replied, "as long as it's forward." As we drove into the unknown, I realized that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go, of expectations, of resentments, of the past itself. And in that letting go, we find the strength to begin again. The road stretched out before us, full of possibilities. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to embrace them all. They didn't knock. They never did. My ex-husband and his mother stormed into my parents' house like they still owned me. I was in the kitchen trying to get a handle on dinner while my teenage daughter Emma studied in the dining room. The sudden intrusion made my blood boil. "What are you both doing here?" I demanded, putting down a bowl and stepping into the hallway. Mike smirked, his eyes cold. He hadn't changed. "We have unfinished business, Lisa. It's about the past. About money." I could see Emma peeking out from behind the doorframe, concern etched on her face. She knew enough to stay hidden but close. Carol, Mike's mother, crossed her arms. "This is about what's rightfully ours, Lisa." "Rightfully yours?" I shot back. "You have no right to barge in here." Mike stepped closer, his voice low. "You owe us, Lisa. Owe you. For what?" I spat. The nerve of them. Emma stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mom, do you need me to call Grandpa?" "No, sweetie," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Turning back to Mike, I added, "You need to leave. Now. We have nothing to discuss." Carol's eyes narrowed. "You think you can just walk away from everything without consequences? Think again," I scoffed. "The only consequences are the ones you've brought on yourselves." Mike took another step forward, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "If you won't talk to us willingly, we can take this to court. You can't hide forever, Lisa." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "You're not welcome here. Get out before I call the police." Carol sneered. "You're making a mistake, dear." Mike looked at Emma. "This affects you too, Emma. Think about your future." Emma stepped beside me, taking my hand. "My future doesn't include you," she said, her voice stronger than I felt at that moment. Mike's face hardened. "Fine, we'll be back. You can't run from this forever, Lisa." I watched them leave, slamming the door behind them. Emma hugged me, and I felt my resolve solidify. This wasn't over, but I wouldn't let them bully us anymore. "Mom, what did they mean about money?" Emma asked, her eyes brimming with worry. I sighed, leading her back to the dining room. "It's complicated, honey. They're trying to stir up trouble because they're bitter about the divorce, but we'll deal with it, together." Emma sat down, her face a mixture of concern and determination. "You don't have to face them alone, Mom." Her words gave me strength. "I know, sweetie, and I won't. We'll handle whatever they throw at us. We're stronger than they think." We continued with dinner, the tension lingering like a bad taste in the air. But in that moment, within the walls of my parents' house, we were safe. I knew we had a battle ahead, but I also knew we had each other, and that was enough to face whatever came next. The intrusion had stirred up a storm of emotions, and as I cleared the table, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Mike and Carol were out for blood, and I had to be ready for whatever they planned next. But they underestimated the strength that comes from protecting your own. They underestimated me. The house was quiet after the door slammed shut, but a storm brewed inside me. I watched Emma pick at her food, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. "Emma, are you okay?" I asked, settling down across from her. She looked up, gnawing at her lip. I need to tell you something, Mom. Something about Dad. My stomach tightened. What's going on, honey? Emma hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. Before you and Dad divorced, I saw him with another woman. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? When did this happen? Her eyes welled up with tears. A few months before everything happened. I saw them together at a cafe. They were holding hands. The room felt like it was closing in on me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was scared, Mom. I didn't want to make things worse. I hoped it was just nothing, she whispered, biting her lip. I reached across the table, squeezing her trembling hand. It's not your fault, Emma. None of this is. Thank you for telling me now. She nodded, relief washing over her face. What are we going to do, Mom? We're going to find the truth and make sure they face the consequences, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. The next few days were tense. I couldn't shake the image of Mike with another woman. I needed answers. One evening as I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, I called my friend Mandy. She was a part-time investigator, and I trusted her. Mandy, I need your help, I said as she picked up. What's going on, Lisa? Her concerned voice was a small comfort. Mike was cheating on me before the divorce. I need proof, and if he's hiding anything else, I need to know. There was a pause before she responded. I'll look into it. But be careful, Lisa. These things can get ugly. I know, but I need to do this for Emma, I replied, glancing at my daughter, who was engrossed in her homework. Emma and I had more conversations over the following week. She remembered small details about the woman she'd seen with Mike, an old friend of mine, Rachel. The betrayal stung deeper, knowing someone I once trusted was involved. One afternoon, I confronted Emma in the living room. Emma, what else do you remember about that woman with your dad? Emma looked up from her book, her eyebrows knit together. She had dark hair, kind of curly. I think it was Rachel. My heart sank. Rachel? Are you sure? Emma nodded slowly. I saw them together more than once, Mom. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, sweetie. You've helped more than you know. I struggled to keep my voice steady. Emma sighed. I wish things were different. We can't change the past, but we can shape our future, I said, wrapping an arm around her. We'll get through this. Mandy soon had news. She'd gathered enough evidence, emails, photos, even financial records, that proved Mike's affair with Rachel. The betrayal was now concrete. As I sifted through the damning evidence, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about the lies and the deceit that ripped through our lives. Mike had to face the consequences, and I would make sure he did. Emma and I were in this together, and that gave me strength. The storm was far from over, but now I had a direction, a purpose. We would expose the truth, and Mike would finally see the fallout from his actions. Over the next few days, I took Mandy's gathered evidence and pieced together the timeline of Mike's affair. The betrayal hurt, but knowing the truth fueled my determination. I needed more. So I called up an old friend who worked at a small-town investigative firm. Lisa, it's been a while, said Jerry as we sat in his cluttered office. Photos filled the walls, trophies of solved cases. He offered me a smile, though his eyes were serious. What can I do for you? I need your help, I replied, handing him the folder Mandy had compiled. My ex-husband Mike. I need every detail you can find on him, and this woman Rachel. Jerry flipped through the pages, his brows furrowed. You sure about this? Digging up more might be rough. I'm sure. My voice didn't waver, despite the churning in my gut. I need to know everything. I'll get on it, he said. Give me a few days. As I left his office, a sense of both dread and anticipation hung over me. I busied myself at work, trying to remain focused, but my thoughts always drifted back to the revelations. Days later, Jerry called me. We met at a quiet diner, away from prying eyes. He slid a second folder across the table. You might want to sit down for this. Inside were more than just photos and emails. There were financial statements. Mike had been siphoning money from our joint savings for years, funneling it to secret accounts that funded his double life with Rachel. My finger trembled as I sifted through the evidence. He's been meticulous, Jerry said, sipping his coffee, but not enough to cover his tracks completely. I can't believe this, I murmured. Not just the affair, but the money, our savings. Jerry nodded. He's vile. Betraying your trust like this, what do you plan to do? I closed the folder, a fierce determination rising within me. He thinks he can get away with this, but he's about to learn otherwise. Back home, I spread the new evidence across the dining table. Emma joined me, her eyes wide with curiosity and concern. "Mom, what did you find out?" "Turns out your dad was doing more than just cheating," I said, showing her the papers. "He was stealing from us too." Emma looked through the documents, her face a mix of anger and sadness. "How could he do this to us?" "I don't know, honey," I replied, hugging her, "but I promise he'll pay for it." Later that night, I called Mandy. "I've got more now, enough to confront him," she sighed. "Lisa, just be careful. This kind of confrontation can get messy." "I know, but I can't let him get away with this." The next day, I arranged a meeting with a family lawyer recommended by Jerry. We discussed the financial evidence, and he assured me we had a solid case. "He'll have no choice but to face the consequences," the lawyer said, his voice firm. "You've got him cornered." Despite knowing this, a knot of anxiety remained tight in my chest. With the evidence gathered, I now prepared myself for the next step, confronting Mike and Rachel face to face. It was time to reveal what I knew and watch their deceit unravel around them. As I sat on the edge of my bed that night, Emma's quiet presence beside me, I felt a sense of resolve wash over. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming our lives from the shadow of deceit. Together, we'd bring the truth to light, and Mike would finally face the fallout of his actions. With the evidence in hand and a plan forming in my mind, we waited. The storm was about to break, and I braced myself for the confrontation ahead. I sat at the local coffee shop, staring at the door every few seconds. Rachel was late, but I expected nothing less. She liked to make an entrance. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. Finally, she sauntered in, her hair perfectly styled and her makeup impeccable. She spotted me and rushed over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Lisa, long time no see, how are you?" "Doing well, Rachel. How about you?" I kept my voice neutral, gesturing to the seat across from me. She settled in, crossing her legs and leaning forward slightly. "Oh, keeping busy. Life after divorce, right?" I forced a smile. "Right. Funny how things turn out." Her eyes flickered, a brief flash of something guarded. "Yeah, funny. So, what have you been up to?" "Keeping busy myself," I said, taking another sip. "Emma and I have been adjusting, moving forward. Speaking of moving forward, I heard you ran into Mike recently." Rachel's smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly recovered. "Oh yeah, small world, huh?" "Small town, more like," I replied, giving her a pointed look. "You never really know people as well as you think you do." She fumbled slightly with her cup. "What are you implying?" I leaned in, my voice low but firm. "I think you know exactly what I'm implying, Rachel." Her face paled slightly before she plastered on another smile. "Lisa, if you have something to say, just say it." "I know about the affair," I said flatly, watching her reaction closely. "I know everything." Rachel's facade cracked. She set her cup down, her hands trembling. "Lisa, it's not what you think. So, you weren't having an affair with my husband? You weren't helping him steal from me?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She looked around nervously, her voice a whisper now. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Mike said he was leaving you anyway. He said you were done." "And the money? What about that? Was I done with our savings too?" I demanded, feeling the anger rise. "Lisa, please. Mike planned everything. I just went along with it," she stammered, her eyes pleading. "You betrayed me, Rachel." "Not just as a friend, but as a human being," I said, standing up. "And make no mistake, you'll both pay for this." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "Lisa, please, I can help. I can testify against Mike. Just give me a chance." I watched her for a moment, weighing her words. Finally, I nodded. "Fine, you want to make it right? Get me more evidence. Show me you're serious." Rachel looked relieved, nodding quickly. "I will. I promise." I walked out of the coffee shop, my heart pounding. Step 1 was done. Rachel was scared and willing to turn on Mike. I needed every piece of leverage I could get, and having her on my side, even temporarily, was one more card to play. Back home, I found Emma curled up on the couch, reading. She looked up as I came in, concern in her eyes. "How did it go, Mom?" "As expected," I said, sitting next to her. "Rachel's scared. She'll give us more evidence against Mike." Emma nodded, a small smile forming. "Good, he can't keep hurting us." "No, he can't," I agreed, hugging her tightly. "And he won't. We're going to bring him down, Emma." together. As I held my daughter, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We had the beginnings of a plan, and the pieces were falling into place. Now we just had to see it through. And Mike, well, his time was running out. A week later, Rachel called me, her voice frantic. "Lisa, I've got more. Meet me at the park near the old oak tree." I agreed and hurried there, the autumn air chilling my resolve into something harder. Rachel was already waiting, clutching an envelope. Her hands were shaking. "Here," she said, thrusting the envelope at me. "This is everything I could find. Emails, bank statements, all of it." I opened the envelope, my eyes scanning the documents. It was damning evidence, proof of Mike's betrayal and greed. "Why are you doing this, Rachel?" I asked, still not fully trusting her. She looked down, tears filling her eyes. "I made a mistake, Lisa. A huge mistake. I thought he loved me, but I see now that he was using me. I just want to make things right." I nodded, pocketing the envelope. "All right, but this doesn't absolve you. You still played a part." "I know," she whispered, looking broken. "But please, take him down. He deserves it." "You can count on that," I said, turning to leave. "Stay out of the way. This is between me and Mike now." Back home, I spread the new evidence across the table, my breath catching in my throat. Mandy walked in, her eyes widening at the sight. "That's quite a haul." "Yeah," I said, passing her a stack of emails. "This should prove he was siphoning money for years." Mandy scanned through them, her face hardening. "Lisa, this isn't just about an affair anymore. This is fraud, plain and simple." "Exactly," I replied, organizing the papers, "and he's going to face the consequences." "Are you ready for this?" Mandy's voice was cautious but supportive. I nodded. More than ever. The following day, I made copies of everything and met with our family lawyer. He inspected the evidence, nodding approvingly. "You've got a solid case, Lisa. Mike won't be able to squirm out of this." "Good," I said, leaning back in my chair, "because I want him to face every bit of it." Our plan was simple but effective. Use the evidence to confront Mike and Rachel publicly, ensuring they couldn't deny or hide from their actions. Later, as I sat in my office at work, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Emma. "Mom, what's the next step?" I replied quickly, "We confront them at the community fundraiser this weekend. Be ready." My heart raced as the night of the fundraiser approached. Emma and I walked through the crowded event, my mind focused on the plan. Mike and Rachel were there, chatting with guests, oblivious to the storm heading their way. I approached them, my voice loud enough to catch everyone's attention. "Enjoying your evening? Because it's about to get a lot more interesting." Mike's face turned ashen, pure rage flickering in his eyes. "Lisa, what are you doing?" "Exposing the truth," I replied, holding out the envelope. "We all deserve to know what you've been up to." A murmur spread through the crowd as I detailed Mike's theft and infidelity. Faces turned from curious to disgusted, and whispers grew louder. Rachel looked ready to flee, guilt written all over her face. "Lisa, please, don't do this." "It's too late for that," I said, my voice unwavering. "You both betrayed and stole from me. Now everyone knows." A crowd member called out, "Isn't that Mike? What's going on?" Mike's facade crumbled and he snarled, "You've ruined me, Lisa." I met his glare with steel. "No, Mike, you ruined yourself." It felt like a weight had lifted as I walked away, Emma beside me. The truth was out, and the fallout had begun. Mike and Rachel had nowhere to hide now. Emma hugged me tightly once we were outside. "We're going to be okay, right, Mom?" I kissed her forehead, feeling the strength in her embrace. "Yes, sweetie, we are. Together, we're going to be just fine." As we headed home, the night sky clear above us, I knew one thing for sure. The future was ours to rebuild, one step at a time. The truth was burning inside me, ready to explode. It was time to face them. I stood in the thick of the crowd at the community fundraiser, feeling the weight of the confrontation ahead. Emma was at my side, her hand squeezing mine in silent support. I caught sight of Mike, flanked by a few colleagues, his charm on full display. Rachel hovered nearby, eyeing me with a mix of fear and defiance. It was now or never. I cleared my throat and stepped forward, raising my voice enough for everyone to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption, but I have something important to share." Heads turned in my direction, and the room fell silent. Mike's eyes narrowed, his smile faltering. "Lisa, what are you doing?" "Enough lies, Mike," I said, holding up the stack of evidence. "It's time everyone knows the truth about you and Rachel." A murmur spread through the crowd as I began laying out the details, the affair, the theft, the betrayal. Faces turned from curious to shocked to disgusted. Rachel looked like a deer in headlights, frozen as I revealed their sordid secrets one by one. Mike's been siphoning money from our joint account for years. I said, my voice unwavering. He's been using it to fund his affair with Rachel. Enjoying your evening because it's about to get a lot more interesting, I added, turning to face the two of them fully. The anger in Mike's eyes was unmistakable. Lisa, shut up! But I was far from finished. You betrayed me, lied to me, and stole from our family, I continued, addressing the crowd more than Mike, and it's time to face the consequences. A ripple of gasps and whispers swept through the room. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Isn't that Mike? What's going on?" Mike lunged forward, trying to snatch the papers from my hands. "You've ruined me, Lisa." I stepped back, holding the evidence high. "No, Mike, you ruined yourself." Rachel finally found her voice, her tone desperate. "I tried to stop him, Lisa. You have to believe me." "Believe you?" I laughed bitterly. "You're just as guilty. You knew exactly what you were doing." The air was thick with tension as the fundraiser organizers pulled me aside, trying to defuse the situation. But the damage was done. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. As Mike and Rachel stood there, exposed and humiliated, the crowd began to turn against them. Colleagues avoided their gaze, friends whispered behind cupped hands, and some even walked away in disgust. My lawyer, who had been conveniently present, stepped forward, taking the stack of evidence from me. "We'll be in touch, Mike. I suggest you prepare yourself." Mike glared at me one last time before storming out, Rachel trailing after him. The room gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy, though the tension lingered like a bad odor. Emma hugged me tightly, her eyes shining with pride. "We did it, Mom. We really did it." I kissed the top of her head, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. Yes, we did. And now we can start to move on. We left the event, the cold night air feeling like a fresh start. As we walked hand in hand, I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be ours to walk, free from the shadows of deceit. Back at the house, as Emma drifted off to sleep, I sat by the window, looking out into the darkness. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. The truth was out, and the healing could finally begin. Together, Emma and I would rebuild our lives, one step at a time. The fallout began almost immediately. Mike's phone calls went unanswered as colleagues, friends, and even family members turned their backs. His once flawless reputation lay in ruins. At work, the whispers grew louder until they reached the ears of his superiors. I received a call from an old friend who worked in Mike's company, the tone hushed and serious. "Lisa, you won't believe it. They're launching an internal investigation into Mike's finances. He might lose his job." "Good," I replied coldly. "He deserves everything that's coming to him." Meanwhile, Rachel's world was unraveling too. Her husband, blindsided by the affair and fraud, filed for divorce immediately. She showed up at my doorstep one evening, eyes red and swollen. She clutched a piece of paper in her hand. "Lisa, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "What do you want, Rachel?" She took a deep breath, shoving the paper toward me. "It's the divorce papers. I don't know what to do." "That's not my problem, Rachel. You made your bed," I said firmly, my sympathy buried under layers of betrayal. "Please, I didn't know it would end like this," she cried, her tears falling freely. "I lost everything." "You didn't think about that when you were stealing from me, did you?" I snapped. "You should leave." "My life is falling apart, Lisa," she screamed, desperation etched on her face. "I'm losing everything." "And you think I should care? You brought this on yourself," I replied, shutting the door on her pleading eyes. The next few days brought more chaos for Mike. He was suspended pending the investigation, and the bank froze his accounts. Every time he tried to reach out to me, I ignored his calls. Emma and I were determined to move forward. "Mom, you look tired. Are you okay?" Emma asked one evening as we sat on the couch, the TV playing softly in the background. "I'm fine, sweetie," I said, squeezing her hand. "Just thinking about how everything is changing." Emma's face grew serious. "Do we have to see Dad again?" I shook my head. "Not if we don't want to. We have the power to decide what's best for us." She nodded, her expression softer. "Good. I don't want to see him." "I understand." I replied, pulling her into a hug. We're going to be all right, Emma. The next afternoon, as I was organizing the documents to finalize the legal battles, Mike showed up at my office. He looked disheveled and desperate. Lisa, we need to talk, he said, barging in past my protests. What do you want, Mike? I said, my patience wearing thin. You've ruined me, Lisa. Everything's falling apart, he hissed, eyes filled with a mixture of anger and fear. No, Mike, you ruined yourself, I shot back. You lied, cheated, and stole. Did you expect no consequences? He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I lost my job. The investigation's tearing me apart. Please, help me fix this. I stared at him, incredulous. Help you? You're unbelievable. After everything you've done, you expect me to help you? Please, Lisa. For Emma's sake, he begged, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. Don't bring her into this. She's suffered enough because of you, I said coldly. Get out of my office, Mike. Face your consequences as like an adult. His shoulders sagged as he walked out, the reality of his actions weighing him down. I watched him leave, my heart steady, knowing I had made the right choice. As the days turned into weeks, the repercussions of Mike's actions unraveled further. Rachel moved out of town, trying to escape the scandal. Mike's life continued to crumble, each new day stripping away a piece of his former self. Through it all, Emma and I found our footing in our new normal, taking it day by day. We weren't just surviving, we were starting to thrive. And that was the best revenge of all. The sun shone brightly as Emma and I unpacked the last of the boxes in our new home. It was a modest house in a quieter part of town, but it felt like a fresh start. Mom, where should I put these books? Emma asked, holding up a stack. Let's set up a small bookshelf in the living room, I suggested, smiling at her enthusiasm. We worked together, arranging our things with care. Each item found its place, and with each box emptied, the house started to feel more like home. In the early evening, as we relaxed on the couch, Emma turned to me. Do you think Dad will ever get his life together? I sighed, thinking of the wreckage Mike had made of his own life. I don't know, Emma. That's up to him now. But we don't have to worry about that anymore. She nodded, her face serene. I'm glad we're here, Mom. It feels right. Me too, sweetie, I said, hugging her close. We're starting a new chapter. To celebrate our new beginning, we decided to have a small dinner party. I invited Mandy and a few close friends. They came with warm smiles and housewarming gifts, their presence filling the house with laughter and joy. Mandy pulled me aside later in the evening, her eyes twinkling. You've come a long way, Lisa. I'm proud of you. Thanks, Mandy, I said, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I couldn't have done it without you. As the night wound down and our guests left, Emma and I sat on the porch, gazing at the stars. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We're going to be okay, right, Mom? Yes, we are, sweetie. Together, I assured her, kissing her forehead. The days turned into weeks, and we settled into our new routine. Emma thrived in her new school, with Swaf making friends and engaging in activities she enjoyed. I found solace in my work and the rhythm of our new life. One afternoon, I received a letter from Mike. He had lost everything, his job, his home, and most of his friends. But the tone of the letter was different. It wasn't angry or blaming. It was reflective, almost remorseful. Lisa, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I realize the depth of my mistakes. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you and Emma. I hope you both find the happiness you deserve. I read the letter twice, feeling a mix of emotions. I decided not to respond. Mike's journey was his own now, and I needed to focus on ours. Morn, everything okay? Emma asked, noticing my thoughtful expression. Yeah, I said, smiling, just thinking about how far we've come. Me too, she said, her eyes bright. I can't wait to see what's next. Life continued, filled with small, meaningful moments that stitched our days together. Emma and I grew stronger, not just as individuals, but as a family unit. We learned to cherish the quiet joy of everyday life, free from the shadow of deceit and betrayal. One Saturday morning, Emma and I decided to plant a garden in the backyard. As we dug into the soil, planting seeds for the future, we laughed and talked about our dreams. One day this garden will be full of flowers, Emma said, her eyes shining with hope. Yes, it will, I agreed, feeling the richness of the soil in my hands, just like our lives. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over our new home, I felt a deep sense of contentment. The journey had been hard, filled with pain and betrayal, but we had come out stronger. The future stretched before us, a path we would walk together step by step, one day at a time. And for the first time in a long while, I knew we would be all right. The jingle of the bell above the diner's door announced my arrival. I scanned the room, taking in the faded red vinyl booths and the faint aroma of stale coffee and greasy food. This was exactly the kind of place I'd been looking for, somewhere to blend in, to start over without drawing attention. "Just one?" The voice of the middle-aged waitress snapped me out of my thoughts. "Yes, please." I forced a polite smile. She led me to a booth by the window and handed me a laminated menu. "Take your time, hon." As she walked away, I let out a slow breath, trying to shake off the lingering unease that had followed me since leaving Boston. This was a fresh start, a chance to leave the past behind. I had to make it work. The bell jingled again, and a man strode in, his confident gait instantly commanding attention. He caught my eye and flashed a smile that made my heart skip a beat. There was something disarmingly familiar about him, like a memory I couldn't quite place. "A new face in town, huh?" he remarked casually, sliding into the booth across from me. I tensed, my guard immediately rising. "Yeah, just moved here," I replied, forcing another smile. "What gave it away?" He chuckled softly, his piercing blue eyes studying me intently. "Oh, just a hunch. Small towns don't get many newcomers." "So, what's your name?" he asked, extending a hand. I hesitated for a moment before taking it. "Alice," I said reluctantly. "Alice Grant." "James," he nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "James Rivers." His grip lingered a beat too long, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more about me than he let on. I pulled my hand back, suddenly regretting my decision to come here. "So, Alice," James leaned back, his gaze never wavering, "what brings you to our little slice of paradise?" I swallowed hard, struggling to maintain my composure. "Just needed a change of scenery," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Ah, I see." He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Well, let me be the first to welcome you. I have a feeling we're going to get to know each other real well." As he stood and walked away, I couldn't help but wonder what exactly he meant by that, and more importantly, how much did he already know about the life I was so desperate to leave behind. The next few weeks passed in a blur as I settled into my new life in the small town. I found a job at a local bookstore, relishing the peace and quiet it offered. The owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Henderson, seemed content with my desire to keep to myself. "You've got a real gentle way about you, dear," she remarked one afternoon as we restocked the shelves. "Not like most of the young folks these days." I smiled politely, grateful for her kindness but wary of getting too close. The last thing I needed was to let anyone in, to risk them uncovering the truth about my past. As the days went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I stepped out of my apartment, I half expected to see that familiar smirk, those piercing blue eyes studying me from a distance. James Rivers. Our encounter at the diner had left me deeply unsettled, and the fact that I hadn't seen him since only amplified my paranoia. Was he watching me, waiting for the right moment to make his move? Or was I just being paranoid, my past trauma clouding my judgment? One crisp autumn evening, as I was closing up the bookstore, the bell above the door jingled, and there he stood, hands in his pockets, that infuriatingly casual smile plastered across his face. "Well, well, if it isn't the mysterious Miss Grant," he drawled, sauntering toward me. "Working hard, I see." I tensed, my fingers tightening around the stack of books I was holding. "What do you want, James?" He held up his hands in mock surrender. "Easy there. No need to get defensive. I'm just making conversation." "Well, I'm not really in the mood for conversation," I snapped, brushing past him toward the front counter. He followed close behind, his footsteps echoing in the empty store. "You know, you've been awfully hard to track down these past few weeks." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "Track down? What are you talking about?" James leaned against the counter, his gaze boring into me. "Oh, come on, Alice. You didn't really think you could just disappear, did you?" My mouth went dry as the realization washed over me. He knew. Somehow he knew about my past, about the life I'd left behind in Boston. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "Let's just say I'm a friend of an old acquaintance, and he's been very worried about you, Alice." I felt sick to my stomach, the walls closing in around me. This was it. My past had finally caught up with me, and there was nowhere left to run. My heart raced as James's words sank in. An old acquaintance? There was only one person that could mean Derek. My manipulative, controlling ex-husband who had made my life a living hell back in Boston. "You're working for Derek, aren't you?" I demanded, clenching my fists to hide the tremors running through my hands. James simply shrugged, that infuriating smirk never leaving his face. The man has deep pockets, and he's willing to pay handsomely to get what he wants. And what exactly does he want? I spat, feeling a surge of defiance rise within me. Well, that should be obvious. James leaned in closer, his voice low and menacing. "He wants you back, Alice, and he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants." A chill ran down my spine at the implication behind his words. Derek had always been possessive, convinced that I belonged to him, that he could control every aspect of my life. The thought of being dragged back into that nightmare was almost too much to bear. "Tell him he can go to hell," I growled, standing my ground. "I'm not going anywhere with him or his lackeys." James's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something else behind that casual facade. Anger, maybe even a hint of admiration. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that," he conceded. "But you're playing a dangerous game here, Alice." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, tossing it onto the counter between us. "Derek wanted me to give you these. Said you might need some convincing." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and felt the blood drain from my face. Inside were a stack of photos, candid shots of me going about my daily life here in this small town, shopping at the grocery store, walking to work, even standing outside my apartment building. Derek had been watching me, tracking my every move. "He's not going to stop, Alice," James said, his voice taking on a softer tone. "He's obsessed with you, and he's got the money and resources to make life very difficult for you if you don't cooperate." I looked up at him, my eyes brimming with tears of frustration and anger. "So, what? I'm just supposed to give in? Let him control me again?" James held my gaze for a long moment, and I could have sworn I saw a flicker of something else in his eyes. Sympathy, maybe? "Look, I'm just the messenger here," he said finally. "But if I were you, I'd think long and hard about what's really important. Because Derek Wallace doesn't take no for an answer." With that, he turned and walked out of the bookstore, leaving me alone with the weight of his words and the sickening realization that my past had finally caught up with me. That night, as I tossed and turned in bed, memories of my life with Derek came flooding back, unbidden. The way he had slowly but surely isolated me from my friends and family. The constant put-downs and criticisms, chipping away at my self-worth until I was a mere shell of my former self. And the rage, that terrifying white-hot rage that would flare up at the slightest provocation, leaving me cowering in fear. It had started out so innocently, like it so often does. Derek was charming and attentive, sweeping me off my feet with grand gestures and lavish gifts. But as the months went by, the cracks began to show, the possessiveness, the jealousy, the need to control every aspect of my life. "You're mine, Alice," he would growl, his grip tightening around my wrist until I winced in pain. "Don't you ever forget that." And I didn't. How could I, when every day was a constant reminder of the power he held over me? The threats, the intimidation tactics, the promises of what he would do if I ever tried to leave. But one night, after a particularly brutal outburst that left me bruised and broken, something inside me finally snapped. I couldn't live like this anymore, constantly walking on eggshells, fearing for my safety and my sanity. So I ran. I packed a bag and slipped out in the middle of the night, leaving behind the luxurious prison Derek had built for me. It wasn't easy. He had eyes and ears everywhere, people loyal to him and the wealth he commanded. But I was determined to start over, to build a life for myself far away from his reach. And for a few blissful weeks, I thought I had succeeded. I found a job, a place to live, and started to piece together the shattered fragments of my life. But then James showed up, shattering the fragile illusion of safety I had constructed. As the sun peeked through my bedroom curtains, I made a decision. I couldn't keep running, not anymore. If Derek wanted a fight, then that's what he would get. I would stand my ground and face him head-on, no matter the cost. With a newfound sense of determination, I threw back the covers and got dressed. There was someone I needed to see. Someone who could help me take Derek down once and for all. The crisp autumn air stung my lungs as I made my way through the deserted park, my footsteps crunching on the fallen leaves. This was it, the confrontation I had been both dreading and anticipating. I had left James a terse message, demanding to meet on my terms. Surprisingly, he had agreed without argument. As I rounded the corner, I saw him sitting on a bench, his hands stuffed into the pockets of his jacket. He looked up as I approached, that infuriatingly casual smirk playing on his lips. "You wanted to see me?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I want you to leave me alone, James, and I want you to tell Derek that I'm not going back. Not now. Not ever." He raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by my bravado. "Is that so? And what makes you think either of us is going to listen to your demands?" "Because I have information," I blurted out, my heart pounding in my chest, information that could ruin Derek if it ever got out. That seemed to catch his attention. He sat up straighter, his gaze sharpening. "I'm listening." I took a step closer, my voice low and urgent. "Derek has been embezzling money from his company for years, funneling it into offshore accounts, using it to fund his lavish lifestyle and keep his mistresses happy." James's eyes narrowed, but he didn't interrupt. "I have proof," I continued, my confidence growing. "Bank statements, wire transfers, the whole 9 yards. If that information ever got out, it would destroy him." For a long moment, James was silent, considering my words. Then, to my surprise, he let out a low chuckle. "You've got balls, I'll give you that," he said, shaking his head. "But you really think Derek is going to let a little thing like embezzlement stop him? The man is obsessed with you, Alice. He'll stop at nothing to get you back." I clenched my jaw, refusing to back down. "Then I'll go public with the information. Let the world see the kind of man he really is." James leaned back, studying me with a newfound curiosity. "You know, when I first took this job, I thought you were just another spoiled rich girl running away from her problems. But now—" He trailed off, his gaze lingering on me. "Now I'm starting to think there might be more to you than meets the eye." Before I could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps made us both turn. My heart stopped as a figure emerged from the tree line, a figure I knew all too well. "Well, well," Derek drawled, his eyes cold and calculating as they fell on me. "Isn't this a cozy little reunion?" My heart pounded in my chest as Derek stepped out from the shadows, his expensive suit crisp and immaculate as always. Despite the chill in the air, I felt beads of sweat forming on my brow. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice shakier than I would have liked. Derek's lips curled into a condescending smile. "Is that any way to greet your husband, Alice? After all the trouble I've gone through to find you?" I flinched at the word husband, a bitter reminder of the chains I had so desperately tried to break free from. "We're not married anymore, Derek," I spat. "Not after what you did." His eyes flashed with anger, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of the monster that lurked beneath that polished exterior. "You're mine, Alice," he growled, taking a step closer. "You always have been, and you always will be. This little game of hide-and-seek ends now." I instinctively backed away, only to feel James tense beside me. To my surprise, he had risen to his feet, positioning himself between Derek and me. "I think the lady has made her position pretty clear," James said, his voice low and even. "She doesn't want anything to do with you." Derek's gaze flickered to James, and a cruel smile spread across his face. "Ah, yes, the hired help. Tell me, how much is my dear wife paying you to play the knight in shining armor?" James didn't rise to the bait. "This has nothing to do with money. Alice is her own person, and she has the right to make her own choices." For a long moment, the two men stared each other down, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, to my astonishment, Derek threw back his head and laughed, a cold, mirthless sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You really have no idea who you're dealing with, do you?" he sneered, turning his icy glare back to me. "Alice belongs to me, and I'll do whatever it takes to get her back." With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized what he was implying. Derek always had an ace up his sleeve, some leverage or damaging secret he could use to bend people to his will. "What is it this time, Derek?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What twisted game are you playing?" His smile was chilling. Let's just say I have a little something that could make your life very, very difficult if you don't cooperate. He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. But we can discuss that later. For now, I think it's time we went home, don't you? I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died on my lips as Derek's hand moved ever so slightly, and I caught a glimpse of something metallic peeking out from beneath his jacket. A gun. The world seemed to slow to a crawl as Derek's hand moved towards the gun tucked into his waistband. My heart hammered in my chest, every instinct screaming at me to run, to get as far away from this man as possible. But before either of us could react, James was on him, grabbing Derek's wrist and twisting it behind his back with a sickening crack. The gun clattered to the ground as Derek let out a howl of pain. "You son of a bitch," he spat, struggling against James's iron grip. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" "I'm dealing with a coward who threatens women with guns," James growled, his face contorted with fury. "A pathetic excuse for a man." With his free hand, Derek reached into his jacket, no doubt going for another weapon. But James was faster, delivering a vicious blow to Derek's midsection that doubled him over, wheezing. "Alice, run," James barked, his attention momentarily diverted. It was all the opening Derek needed. With a feral snarl, he wrenched himself free and lunged at James, the two men grappling viciously on the ground. I stood frozen, paralyzed by the brutal scene unfolding before me. "Go!" James shouted again, his voice strained as he fought to keep Derek at bay. "Get out of here!" Snapping out of my daze, I turned and ran, my feet pounding against the pavement as I fled the park. Branches scratched at my face and my lungs burned, but I didn't dare slow down, not until I had put as much distance between myself and Derek as possible. Finally, gasping for breath, I stumbled into the parking lot of my apartment complex, collapsing against the rough brick wall. My mind raced, replaying the events of the night over and over again. James had saved me. The man I had initially mistrusted, the one I thought was just another pawn in Derek's twisted game, had put himself in harm's way to protect me. And now, who knew what Derek was capable of doing to him? The thought made my stomach churn, and I knew I couldn't just leave him to face Derek's wrath alone. Not after what he had done for me. Steeling my resolve, I pushed off from the wall and made my way back towards the park, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. As I drew closer, I could hear the sounds of the struggle, grunts of exertion, the dull thud of fists connecting with flesh. And then, silence. I rounded the corner, and the sight that greeted me made my blood run cold. James lay motionless on the ground, a trickle of blood running from a gash above his eye, and standing over him, chest heaving, was Derek, his face twisted into a mask of pure rage. "Well, well," he sneered, turning his icy glare towards me. "Look who decided to come back." My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at Derek, his face twisted into a sneer of triumph. James lay motionless on the ground behind him, and a wave of guilt and fear washed over me. This was all my fault. If I had just gone back with Derek like he demanded, none of this would have happened. "You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you?" Derek spat, taking a menacing step towards me. "Had to go and play the hero. Try to take me down." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. What could I possibly say to reason with this man, this monster who had haunted my every waking moment for so long? "I'm done playing games, Alice," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You're coming home with me, one way or another." A flicker of movement in my peripheral vision caught my eye, and I turned to see James stirring feebly on the ground. Relief flooded through me. He was alive, at least for now. "Don't you dare touch her," James rasped, his words slurred as he struggled to push himself up. Derek let out a derisive snort. "Or what? You'll bleed on me some more." He turned back to me, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "You see what happens when you defy me, Alice? When you try to run?" My mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this nightmare. I couldn't go back with him, not after everything he had put me through. But I couldn't bear the thought of anyone else getting hurt because of me either. That's when I remembered the envelope, the one containing all the damning evidence of Derek's criminal activities. With trembling hands, I reached into my pocket and pulled it out, holding it up for him to see. "You want me, Derek?" I said, my voice wavering slightly. "Fine, but first you have to destroy this." His eyes narrowed as he registered what I was holding. Where did you get that? Does it matter? I countered, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. All that matters is what's inside, enough to bury you for good. For a long moment, Derek was silent, weighing his options. Then slowly he extended his hand. Give it to me. I shook my head defiantly. Not a chance. You destroy it first, then I'll go with you. No tricks. A muscle twitched in Derek's jaw, but he seemed to realize he had no other choice. With exaggerated care, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek silver lighter. Our eyes locked as he flicked it open, the tiny flame dancing in the evening breeze. After you, I said, nodding towards the envelope. Derek's lips curled into a sneer, but he did as I asked, touching the flame to the corner of the envelope. The papers inside caught fire instantly, and he dropped it to the ground, watching impassively as the evidence went up in smoke. There, he said, grinding the ashes beneath his heel. Now come along, like a good girl. I felt sick to my stomach, but I had no other choice. Squaring my shoulders, I started to move towards him, my heart heavy with dread. That's when I heard it, a faint ringing sound coming from the bushes nearby. Derek froze, his brow furrowing in confusion. Then, to my astonishment, a figure emerged from the shadows, holding up a sleek black phone. You really should be more careful with your secrets, Derek, a familiar voice rang out. You never know who might be listening. Mia? I take a deep breath as I step out of the car, my hand tightly clasped in Ethan's. The house looms before us, a stark reminder of the years of silence that stretch between Ethan and his father. I squeeze Ethan's hand, offering a reassuring smile. It's going to be okay, I whisper, though the words feel hollow even to my own ears. Ethan nods, his jaw clenched tight. Let's just get this over with, he mutters, striding towards the front door. I follow, my heart pounding in my chest as Ethan raises his hand to knock. The door swings open, revealing a man I've only seen in faded photographs. Frank, Ethan's father, stands before us, his face etched with lines of age and bitterness. Ethan, he says, his voice gruff. It's been a long time. Dad, Ethan replies, his tone carefully neutral. This is Zara, my wife. Frank's gaze shifts to me, his eyes narrowing slightly. A pleasure, he says, though his tone suggests otherwise. We step inside, the house feeling strangely cold despite the warm summer day. Frank leads us to the living room, gesturing for us to sit. I perch on the edge of the couch, my hands folded tightly in my lap. So, Frank begins, leaning back in his armchair. What brings you here after all these years? Ethan clears his throat, his eyes meeting mine briefly before he speaks. Zara thought it was time we tried to mend things between us. For the sake of family. Frank scoffs, shaking his head. Family? You haven't been much of a family to me, boy. I bristle at his words, but Ethan remains calm. I know we've had our differences, Dad, but I'm here now, aren't I? Frank grunts, his gaze shifting to the window. I suppose you are. The conversation lulls, the tension thick in the air. I clear my throat, desperate to break the silence. Ethan tells me you used to work in sales, Frank. What was that like? Frank's eyes snap back to me, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. It was a job, he says shortly. Nothing more, nothing less. I nod, sensing that further questions won't be welcomed. We sit in awkward silence for a few more moments before Ethan stands abruptly. We should get going, he says, his voice strained. It's a long drive back. Frank nods, rising slowly from his chair. Don't be a stranger, he says, though his words lack sincerity. We say our goodbyes, the door closing behind us with a heavy thud. As we walk back to the car, I can't shake the feeling that something is off. Frank's demeanor, his cold reception, it all feels wrong somehow. A month later, the phone rings. It's Frank, his voice tinged with desperation. I need your help, he says, his words tumbling out in a rush. I'm sick, and I can't take care of myself anymore. I need to move in with you and Ethan. I freeze, the phone nearly slipping from my grasp. Move in with us? After the way he treated Ethan at our visit, I glance at Ethan, seeing the conflicted emotions playing across his face. We'll have to discuss it, I say finally, my voice trembling slightly. Can we call you back? Frank agrees, and I hang up the phone, my mind reeling. I turn to Ethan, my heart sinking at the look of resignation on his face. He's my father, Ethan says softly. I can't turn him away. I nod, knowing that Ethan's sense of duty will always win out in the end. But as we begin to make plans for Frank's arrival, I can't shake the feeling that we're making a terrible mistake. The day Frank moves in, I feel a sense of unease that I can't quite shake. Ethan and I help him settle into the guest room, arranging his few belongings and making sure he's comfortable. At first, things seem to be going smoothly. Frank is polite, even charming at times, and I start to think that maybe my initial reservations were unfounded. But as the weeks pass, I begin to notice little things that set off alarm bells in my head. Frank starts making offhand comments about money, hinting at the financial strain he's under. One evening, over dinner, he finally comes out with it. "I hate to ask," he says, his eyes downcast, "but I'm in a bit of a bind. My late wife, she left me with some significant gambling debts. I don't know how I'm going to pay them off." Ethan's fork clatters to his plate, his face etched with concern. "Dad, why didn't you say something sooner? We could have helped." Frank shakes his head, a wry smile on his lips. "I didn't want to be a burden, but now, living here with you, I thought maybe." He trails off, letting the implication hang in the air. I glance at Ethan, seeing the wheels turning in his head. "We can cover the debts," Ethan says finally, "and you can stay here with us, save on living costs. It's the least we can do." I open my mouth to protest, but the words die on my lips. How can I argue with Ethan's generosity, his desire to help his father? So I nod, forcing a smile onto my face. "Of course," I say, "we're family after all." Frank's face breaks into a grin, and he reaches across the table to clasp Ethan's hand. "Thank you, son. You don't know how much this means to me." But as I watch the exchange, I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. There's a glint in Frank's eye, a calculating edge to his smile that makes my skin crawl. The next few weeks are a blur of financial discussions and budget adjustments. Ethan insists on paying off Frank's debts in full, even though it means dipping into our savings. I try to voice my concerns, but Ethan waves them away. "He's my father, Zara," he says, his voice firm. "I can't just turn my back on him." I nod, swallowing my objections. But as the days pass, I start to notice a change in Ethan. He seems distracted, distant, as if he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. One evening, he comes home late from work, his face drawn and tired. I'm in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when he walks in and slumps into a chair. "I quit my job today," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I nearly drop the spoon I'm holding, my heart leaping into my throat. "What? Why?" Ethan runs a hand through his hair, his eyes meeting mine. "I want to start a nonprofit, Zara. I want to make a difference in the world." I stare at him, my mind reeling. A nonprofit? Now when we're already stretched thin financially? But before I can voice my concerns, Frank walks into the kitchen, his face twisted into a scowl. "A nonprofit?" He sneers, his voice dripping with disdain. "How are you going to support us on that, boy? You think your little dream is more important than taking care of your family?" Ethan flinches as if he's been slapped, his face flushing with shame. "I just thought—" "You thought wrong," Frank snaps, cutting him off. "You're being selfish, Ethan. You can't afford to chase your dreams when you have responsibilities." I watch as Ethan seems to shrink before my eyes, his shoulders slumping in defeat. And in that moment, I realize the truth. Frank isn't here because he needs our help. He's here to manipulate us, to bleed us dry and break us down, and I'll be damned if I let him get away with it. The days turn into weeks, and Frank's presence in our home becomes increasingly suffocating. He seems to take pleasure in belittling Ethan at every turn, constantly reminding him of the financial strain his nonprofit is putting on our family. I try to shield Ethan from the worst of it, but Frank's words have a way of worming their way into his mind. I watch as my once confident husband starts to doubt himself, his dreams slowly crumbling under the weight of his father's disapproval. One evening, I overhear Frank talking to Ethan in the living room. His voice is loud, carrying easily through the thin walls. "You're a failure, Ethan," he says, his tone dripping with contempt. "You think you can change the world with your little nonprofit? You can't even take care of your own family." I feel a surge of anger rising in my chest, and I storm into the room, my eyes blazing. "That's enough, Frank," I snap, my voice trembling with rage. "You have no right to speak to Ethan that way." Frank turns to me, his face twisted into a sneer. "Stay out of this, Zara. This is between me and my son." But I refuse to back down. "Ethan is my husband," I say, my voice growing stronger with each word, "and I won't let you tear him down like this." Frank scoffs. shaking his head. You don't understand, girl. I'm trying to help him, to make him see the error of his ways. I laugh, the sound harsh and bitter. Help him? By crushing his dreams and making him feel worthless? That's not help, Frank. That's abuse. Ethan looks up at me, his eyes wide with surprise. I can see the gratitude in his gaze, the relief at having someone stand up for him. But Frank isn't finished. You think you're so smart, don't you, Zara? He says, his voice low and menacing. You think you know what's best for Ethan? Well, let me tell you something. I'm his father, and I know what's best for him. And what's best is for him to give up this foolish dream and focus on taking care of his family. I shake my head, my heart breaking for Ethan. You're wrong, Frank. Ethan's dream is what makes him who he is. It's what drives him, what gives him purpose, and I won't let you take that away from him. Frank's face darkens, and for a moment, I think he might lash out at me, but instead he turns and stalks out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I turn to Ethan, my heart aching at the defeated slump of his shoulders. I'm so sorry, I whisper, pulling him into my arms. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. Ethan clings to me, his body shaking with silent sobs. I don't know what to do, Zara, he says, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I feel like I'm being pulled in 1,000 different directions. I stroke his hair, my mind racing with possibilities, and then, suddenly, it hits me. The pieces fall into place, and I realize the truth of what's been happening. Ethan, I say, pulling back to look him in the eye, I think your father is manipulating us. I think he's been planning this from the start. Ethan frowns, his brow furrowing in confusion. What do you mean? I take a deep breath, my mind whirling with the implications of what I'm about to say. Think about it. He shows up out of nowhere, asking for money and a place to stay. He guilt-trips you into quitting your job and starting a nonprofit, knowing it will put a strain on our finances. And now, he's constantly belittling you, making you feel like a failure. Ethan's eyes widen, and I can see the realization dawning on his face. You're right, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. But why? Why would he do this? I shake my head, my heart heavy with the knowledge of what we're up against. I don't know, I say, but I intend to find out. The next day, I wait until Ethan leaves for work before confronting Frank. I find him in the living room, lounging in his armchair with a newspaper in his lap. We need to talk, I say, my voice tight with anger. Frank looks up at me, his eyes narrowing. About what? I take a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation to come. I know what you're doing, Frank. I know you're manipulating Ethan, trying to bleed us dry. Frank's face hardens, and he sets the newspaper aside. I don't know what you're talking about, Zara. I'm just a concerned father, trying to look out for my son. I shake my head, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. No, you're not. You're a liar and a manipulator, and I won't let you get away with it. Frank stands up, his face twisting into a sneer. You don't know anything, girl. You think you can come into my family and start making accusations? You have no idea what you're talking about. I stand my ground, refusing to be intimidated. I know more than you think, Frank. I know about your debts, about how you've been using Ethan to pay them off. Frank's eyes widen, and for a moment I see a flicker of fear cross his face, but then his expression hardens, and he takes a step towards me. You think you're so clever, don't you, Zara? He says, his voice low and menacing. You think you've got it all figured out. Well, let me tell you something. You're right, I am in debt. But it's not from gambling. It's from failed business ventures, investments that went south. I stare at him, my mind reeling with the implications of his words. So, you've been using Ethan to bail you out? To pay off your mistakes? Frank shrugs, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. What can I say? The boy owes me. I raised him, put a roof over his head. The least he can do is help his old man out in his time of need. I feel a surge of disgust rising in my throat, and I have to fight the urge to slap the smug look off his face. You're despicable, I spit, my voice trembling with rage. You're taking advantage of Ethan's love for you, his sense of duty. You're destroying him, piece by piece. Frank laughs, the sound harsh and grating. Destroying him? Please. I'm making him stronger, teaching him the realities of life, and if he can't handle it, well, that's his problem. I shake my head, my heart breaking for Ethan. You're wrong, Frank. Ethan is one of the strongest people I know, and he doesn't need you, not anymore. Frank's face darkens, and he takes another step towards me. You think you can turn him against me? You think you can take my son away from me? I stand my ground, my chin lifted in defiance. I'm not taking him away from you, Frank. You're doing that yourself, with your lies and your manipulations. Frank's hand twitches at his side, and for a moment I think he might strike me, but instead he turns away, his shoulders slumping in defeat. You don't understand, Zara, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I have a plan, a way to get out of this mess. I was going to sell the house, force you and Ethan out. I even turned his sister against you, convinced her to take my side. I stare at him, my mind reeling with the depths of his betrayal. You monster, I whisper, my voice trembling with emotion. You would destroy your own family just to save yourself? Frank turns back to me, his face a mask of desperation. I have no choice, Zara. I'm drowning in debt, and I need a way out. I shake my head, my resolve hardening. No, Frank, you do have a choice. You can face the consequences of your actions like a man. You can tell Ethan the truth and beg for his forgiveness. Frank's face twists into a sneer, and he turns away from me. I won't do that, Zara. I can't. I nod, my heart heavy with the knowledge of what I must do. Then I will, Frank. I'll tell Ethan everything, and we'll see how he reacts. But one thing is for sure. You won't be staying in this house any longer. Not if I have anything to say about it. The next few days are a blur of activity. I know I need to act fast, to gather evidence of Frank's betrayal before he has a chance to put his plan into action. I start by secretly recording our conversations, hiding my phone in my pocket and letting it capture every vile word that spills from Frank's lips. He talks about his debts, about his plans to sell the house and leave us with nothing. He even brags about turning Olivia against us, convincing her that we're the enemy. It's sickening to listen to, but I force myself to keep going, to gather as much evidence as I can. I know I'll need it if I'm going to convince Ethan of the truth. Finally, after days of recording, I have what I need. I wait until Ethan gets home from work, then pull him aside, my heart pounding in my chest. There's something you need to hear, I say, my voice trembling with emotion. I play the recordings for him, watching as his face goes from confusion to shock to anger. He listens in silence, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. When the last recording ends, he looks up at me, his eyes blazing with fury. I can't believe it, he whispers, his voice hoarse with emotion. My own father betraying me like this. I nod, my heart breaking for him. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I know how much you love him, how much you wanted to believe in him. Ethan shakes his head, his jaw clenched tight. No, Zara, you were right all along. He's been using me, manipulating me, and I let him do it. I reach out and take his hand, squeezing it gently. It's not your fault, Ethan. He's your father, and you wanted to believe the best of him. But now we need to focus on protecting ourselves, on getting away from him before he can hurt us anymore. Ethan nods, his eyes hardening with resolve. You're right. We need to sell the house, move out before he realizes what's happening. We spend the next few days in a flurry of activity, contacting real estate agents and packing up our belongings. We work in secret, but I was careful not to let Frank catch on to our plans. Finally, the day arrives. We found a buyer for the house, and everything is in place for us to move out. I wait until Frank leaves for one of his mysterious errands, then call Olivia, my hands shaking as I dial her number. Olivia, it's Zara, I say when she answers. There's something you need to hear. I play the recordings for her, my heart pounding as I wait for her reaction. At first, there's only silence on the other end of the line. Then I hear a sharp intake of breath, followed by a string of curses. That bastard, Olivia says, her voice trembling with anger. I can't believe I let him manipulate me like that. I feel a surge of relief wash over me, and I let out a shaky breath. It's not your fault, Olivia. He's good at what he does. But now we need to stand together to make sure he can't hurt anyone else. Olivia agrees, and we spend the next hour plotting our next move. By the time we hang up, I feel a sense of hope stirring in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, we can come out of this stronger than ever. The next day, Ethan and I load the last of our belongings into the moving truck and drive away from the house that has caused us so much pain. As we pull out of the driveway, I catch a glimpse of Frank's face in the rearview mirror. He looks shocked, angry, and maybe even a little afraid. But I don't let myself feel sorry for him. He made his choices, and now he has to live with the consequences. And as for Ethan and me, we have a whole new life ahead of us, one free from lies and manipulation. And I know deep in my heart that we're going to be just fine. We're barely settled into our new apartment when the phone rings. It's Frank, his voice tight with anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Ethan?" he shouts, his words slurring together. "You can't just sell the house and leave me with nowhere to go." Ethan takes a deep breath, his hand clenching the phone so tightly his knuckles turn white. "It's done, Dad. The house is sold, and we're not coming back." Frank lets out a string of curses, his voice rising with each word. "You ungrateful little bastard. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" I see the pain flash across Ethan's face, and I reach out to take his hand, squeezing it gently. He looks at me, his eyes filled with gratitude, and turns back to the phone. "You haven't done anything for me, Dad. You've been using me, manipulating me for your own gain, and I'm done letting you control my life." Frank scoffs, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you're so smart, don't you, Ethan? You think you can just walk away from me? From your family?" Ethan's jaw clenches, and I can see the anger building in his eyes. "You're not my family, Dad. Not anymore. A real family doesn't lie and cheat and steal from each other." There's a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment I think Frank might have hung up. But then his voice comes through the speaker, low and menacing. "You'll regret this, Ethan. You and that bitch wife of yours. You think you can just walk away from me? You have no idea what I'm capable of." I feel a chill run down my spine at his words, but Ethan doesn't flinch. "I know exactly what you're capable of, Dad. And that's why we're walking away. You can't hurt us anymore." He hangs up the phone, his hand trembling slightly as he sets it down on the table. I wrap my arms around him, holding him close as he takes a shuddering breath. "I'm so proud of you," I whisper, my voice thick with emotion. "You did the right thing, Ethan. You stood up to him, and you won." Ethan nods, his eyes filling with tears. "I couldn't have done it without you, Zara. You gave me the strength to fight back, to take control of my life." I smile, brushing a tear from his cheek. "We did it together, Ethan, and we'll keep doing it together, no matter what comes our way." The next few days are tense, as we wait for Frank to make his next move. But as the weeks pass and nothing happens, we start to relax, to settle into our new life. And then, one day, there's a knock at the door. I open it to find Olivia standing there, her face streaked with tears. "I'm so sorry, Zara," she whispers, her voice trembling. "I should have believed you from the start. I should have known that Dad was lying to me." I pull her into a hug, my own eyes filling with tears. "It's okay, Olivia, you're here now, and that's all that matters." We spend the next few hours talking, catching up on all the time we've lost. Olivia tells us about her own struggles with Frank, about how he's been trying to turn her against us for years. "But I see the truth now," she says, her voice filled with determination, "and I'm not going to let him control me anymore. I'm done being his pawn." Ethan nods, his eyes shining with pride. "We're in this together, Olivia. All of us. We'll stand up to him, and we'll win." As the sun sets outside our window, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. We've been through so much, Ethan and I, but we've come out stronger on the other side. And with Olivia by our side, I know that nothing can stop us now. We're a family, a real family, and we'll face whatever comes our way together. A few days later, we get another call from Frank. This time it's Olivia he's after, his voice desperate and pleading. "Olivia, sweetheart, you have to help me," he begs, his words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm in trouble, and I need a place to stay. You're my only hope." Olivia's face hardens, and she grips the phone tighter. "No, Dad, I'm not going to help you. Not after everything you've done." Frank's voice rises, his anger palpable even through the phone. "You ungrateful little brat. I raised you. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me?" Olivia takes a deep breath, her eyes flashing with determination. "You didn't give me anything, Dad. You took from me, you manipulated me, you tried to turn me against my own brother, and I'm done letting you control my life." There's a long pause, and then Frank's voice comes through the speaker, low and menacing. "You'll regret this, Olivia. You and your brother and that bitch wife of his. You think you can just turn your back on me? You have no idea what I'm capable of." But Olivia doesn't flinch. I know exactly what you're capable of, Dad, and that's why I'm saying no. You can't hurt me anymore, and you can't hurt Ethan and Zara either. We're done with you. She hangs up the phone, her hand shaking slightly as she sets it down. Ethan wraps an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. I'm so proud of you, Olivia, he says, his voice thick with emotion. You did the right thing. Olivia nods, leaning into his embrace. I couldn't have done it without you and Zara. You showed me what real love looks like, what a real family is supposed to be. I feel my own eyes fill with tears as I watch them, my heart swelling with love and pride. We've been through so much together, the three of us, but we've come out stronger on the other side. The next day, Ethan and I make a decision. We're going to use the money from the sale of the house to pay off Frank's debts, to free ourselves from his grip once and for all. We contact his creditors, explaining the situation and offering to settle his debts in full. It's not easy and it takes a big chunk out of our savings, but in the end, it's worth it. We meet with Frank one last time in a neutral location with Olivia by our side. He looks haggard, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes rumpled. What do you want? He asks, his voice hoarse and defeated. Ethan steps forward, his chin held high. We're here to tell you that your debts have been paid, Dad. You're free and clear. Frank's eyes widen, and for a moment, I see a flicker of hope cross his face. But then, his expression hardens and he narrows his eyes. What's the catch? He asks, his voice dripping with suspicion. I step forward, my own voice steady and clear. There is no catch, Frank. We paid off your debts because we wanted to be free of you, once and for all. But that freedom comes at a price. You're on your own now, and you'll have to find your own way in the world. Frank's face crumples, and for a moment, I almost feel sorry for him. But then I remember all the pain he's caused, all the lies he's told, and my sympathy vanishes. You can't do this to me, he whispers, his voice breaking. I'm your father, Ethan. You can't just abandon me. Ethan shakes his head, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. You stopped being my father the moment you chose to lie to me, to manipulate me for your own gain. And now, you have to face the consequences of your actions. We turn to leave, our hearts heavy, but our heads held high. As we walk away, I hear Frank's voice behind us, a broken whisper that tears at my heart. I'm sorry, he says, his words barely audible. I'm so sorry. But it's too late for apologies, too late for forgiveness. We've made our choice, and we're not looking back. Months pass, and life goes on. Ethan and I settle into our new routine, our new life together. His nonprofit takes off, and I watch with pride as he pours his heart and soul into making a difference in the world. Olivia becomes a regular fixture in our lives, stopping by for dinner and movie nights, her laughter filling our home with warmth and joy. It's like we've always been this way, a family bound by love and trust, not by blood or obligation. But even as we move forward, the shadow of Frank still lingers. Ethan tries to hide it, but I can see the pain in his eyes whenever his father's name is mentioned, the guilt that still weighs heavy on his heart. One day, I come home from work to find Ethan sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. I rush to his side, my heart pounding with worry. What's wrong? I ask, my voice trembling. Is it your dad? Did something happen? Ethan looks up at me, his eyes red-rimmed and bloodshot. I talked to Olivia today. She said Dad's not doing well. He's living in some run-down apartment, barely getting by on Social Security. She thinks we should reach out to him, try to make amends. I feel a flare of anger at the mention of Frank, but I push it down, focusing on Ethan's pain. What do you want to do? I ask, my voice gentle. Ethan shakes his head, his eyes filling with tears. I don't know, Zara. Part of me wants to help him, to be the bigger person, but another part of me is still so angry, so hurt by what he did. I don't know if I can forgive him. I take his hand in mine, squeezing it gently. You don't have to forgive him, Ethan. What he did to you, to us, is unforgivable. But maybe you can find a way to let go of the anger, to move on with your life. Ethan nods, his jaw clenching with determination. You're right. I need to let go, to focus on the future, not the past. We decide to reach out to Frank, to offer him a small monthly stipend to help with his expenses. It's not much, but it's a start, a way to ease the guilt that still weighs on Ethan's heart. But when we try to contact him, we're met with silence. Calls go unanswered, emails bounce back undeliverable. It's like Frank has disappeared, vanished into thin air. Weeks turn into months and still, there's no word from him. Olivia tries to track him down, but even she comes up empty-handed. It's like he's gone, a ghost haunting the edges of our lives. And then one day, there's a knock at the door. I open it to find a man standing there, his face lined with age and sorrow. "I'm sorry to bother you," he says, his voice hesitant, "but I'm looking for Frank Johnson. I'm his landlord, and I haven't seen him in weeks. I was hoping you might know where he is." I feel a chill run down my spine at his words, a sense of dread settling in the pit of my stomach. "I'm sorry," I say, my voice shaking. "We haven't heard from Frank in months. Is everything okay?" The man shakes his head, his eyes filled with pity. "I'm afraid not. Frank's apartment was a mess when I went in there. It looks like he hasn't been taking care of himself. I found a bunch of empty bottles, some pills scattered on the floor. I think he might be in trouble." I nod, my heart heavy with sorrow. "Thank you for letting us know. We'll do what we can to find him, to get him the help he needs." But even as I say the words, I know it's too late. Frank is gone, lost to his own demons, his own mistakes, and all we can do is pick up the pieces to try to build a life without him. As I close the door, I feel a sense of sadness wash over me. But I also feel a sense of hope, a sense of possibility. We've been through so much, Ethan and I, but we've come out stronger on the other side. And whatever the future holds, I know we'll face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart. Because that's what family does. That's what love is all about. The funeral was a small, somber affair. Just a handful of us gathered to say goodbye to my father, Ted Walton. As I stood there, numb with grief, my mother-in-law, Denise, leaned in close. "Gina, life doesn't wait. You have to start thinking about us now," she said coldly. I fought back tears, my heart aching. Am I not allowed to grieve my father quietly? He was the one person who truly understood me, and now he was gone. After the service, the lawyer approached. "Mrs. Davis, your father left you his house in Brooklyn Heights. It's a quaint but valuable property." My husband Mike's eyes lit up. "Wow, that's incredible. We could renovate it, make it perfect for my parents and us to live together." I felt a knot forming in my stomach. "But I need time. This is all so sudden." Mike squeezed my arm. "Of course, dear. We'll discuss it later." As we drove home, Mike couldn't contain his excitement. Just imagine it. A big, beautiful home for all of us. No more dealing with landlords or mortgages. I stared out the window, my mind swirling. Dad's house was my last connection to him. How could I let it go so easily? In the following weeks, the pressure only intensified. Denise and Frank, my father-in-law, seemed to take every opportunity to criticize me. "Gina, Mike needs more than just chicken thighs. You must do better for him," Denise snapped one night as I served dinner. Frank eyed the meal dismissively. "A cheap steak? After his hard day at work, Mike deserves a proper meal." I bit my tongue, feeling their disapproval like a weight on my shoulders. Mike just shrugged, siding with his parents as usual. Then one afternoon, I came home to a jarring sight, construction vehicles outside Dad's house. A contractor approached me confused. "Mrs. Davis, your husband approved these renovations. We're just following orders." My heart dropped. Renovations? I never agreed to any of this. I stormed inside, confronting Mike. He tried to play it off casually. "It's for the best, Gina. We're making this place our dream home." Tears stung my eyes. "Our dream home? This was my father's house, Mike. How could you do this without even consulting me?" His face hardened. "If you can't accept my parents living with us, then we're through. It's that simple." I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me. After everything Dad had given me, was I really going to let his memory be tarnished like this? Clenching my fists, I met Mike's gaze. "I won't be manipulated anymore. This house is about my father's legacy, and I'm going to protect it, with or without you." As I walked out that day, I knew my life would never be the same. But in that moment, all I could feel was a fierce determination to honor the man who had given me so much strength. After walking out on Mike that day, I felt adrift. My marriage was crumbling, and I had nowhere to go. Thankfully, an old friend of my father's, Paul Hendricks, offered me a lifeline. "Gina, you're welcome to stay with me until you get back on your feet," Paul said warmly, ushering me into his modest apartment. As I settled in, Paul's calming presence reminded me so much of Dad. He had been Dad's confidant for years, and now I desperately needed that wisdom. "Paul, what am I going to do?" I asked, feeling the weight of my situation. Mike has turned Dad's house into a battleground. Paul placed a reassuring hand on my arm. That house is yours, Gina. No one can take that away from you. We'll figure this out together. Over the next few days, Paul and I pored over documents and legal papers, formulating a plan. My determination grew as the path ahead became clearer. Your father wanted that house to be a sanctuary, a place of peace, Paul reminded me. We'll make sure it serves that purpose in his memory. Finally, I was ready to confront Mike and his parents. Paul had secured a meeting at the house, saying it was time for an open discussion about its future. The tension was palpable as Denise, Frank, and Mike arrived. Mike shot me a resentful glare, but I stood my ground, Paul by my side. You had no right to make those decisions about my inheritance, I stated firmly. This house is part of my father's legacy, and I have a plan to honor that. Denise's face contorted in rage. You ungrateful, selfish girl, after everything we've done for you? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. What you've done is try to take control, with no regard for Dad's wishes. Well, it ends now. To my surprise, Mike spoke up, his voice dripping with disdain. So you're just going to throw us out, your own family? If that's what it takes to protect what's rightfully mine, then yes, I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. This is the last time I'll be bullied or manipulated by any of you. Paul stepped forward. I'm afraid you've left us no choice. We have the legal documentation to take over the property immediately. I suggest you make arrangements to leave. Denise opened her mouth to protest, but Frank silenced her with a defeated shake of his head. As they turned to leave, I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me. It was over. I had won. In the weeks that followed, Paul and I worked tirelessly to bring my vision for the house to life. We renovated and refurbished, creating a warm, welcoming space that embodied Dad's generous spirit. He would be so proud of you, Gina, Paul said as we stood in the newly revived garden. You've turned this place into something truly special. I smiled, feeling the warm breeze on my face. I just hope I've honored his memory and shown the strength he instilled in me. As the grand opening day arrived for the new community center, I knew Dad was there in spirit, surrounding me with the serenity he had always provided. It was the first day of my new life, a life of freedom and peace, just as he would have wanted. In the weeks following my confrontation with Mike and his parents, daily life became increasingly tense. Denise and Frank seemed determined to make me miserable, criticizing my every move. Gina, Mike needs more than just chicken thighs for dinner, Denise snapped one evening as I served our modest meal. You must do better for him. I bit my tongue, refusing to engage. But Frank piled on with a dismissive glance at the food. A cheap steak? After his hard day at work, Mike deserves a proper meal. Mike remained silent as usual, siding with his parents through his passivity. I felt utterly alone, isolated in my own home. The constant barrage of demands and insults wore me down. No matter how hard I tried, it was never enough for Denise and Frank. They seemed hell-bent on dominating every aspect of our lives. One evening, as I cleared the dinner plates, Denise fixed me with a cold stare. You know, Gina, we're not getting any younger. We'll need to start discussing living arrangements soon. My heart sank. I knew exactly what she was implying, moving into my father's house in Brooklyn Heights. I need more time, I stammered, feeling trapped. That house means so much to me. It was Dad's. Frank scoffed. Ted's gone now. It's time to start thinking practically about our future as a family. Mike finally spoke up, his voice laced with irritation. They're right, Gina. We can't keep putting this off. My parents need a permanent place to live, and that house is the perfect solution. I wanted to scream. How could he be so callous about my father's memory? But I knew any protest would be met with more criticism, more demands. In the following days, the tension only escalated. Denise and Frank seemed to take every opportunity to remind me of my supposed failings as a wife and daughter-in-law. Did you even dust today, Gina? Denise would sneer, running a finger along a surface. This place is a pigsty. Frank would chime in with his own jabs. No wonder Mike comes home so stressed. This environment is unbearable. Through it all, Mike remained infuriatingly passive, letting his parents dictate the narrative of our lives. I felt like I was slowly suffocating, drowning in their constant belittlement. Finally, one fateful afternoon, I returned home to a shocking sight. construction vehicles outside my father's house. A contractor approached me, confused. "Mrs. Davis, your husband approved these renovations. We're just following orders." My heart dropped to my stomach. Renovations? I never agreed to any of this. I stormed inside, confronting Mike. He tried to play it off casually, but I could see the smug satisfaction in his eyes. "It's for the best, Gina. We're making this place our dream home, just like we discussed." Tears stung my eyes as I realized the profound breach of trust. "Our dream home? This was my father's house, Mike. How could you do this without even consulting me?" His face hardened, and I saw a glimpse of the true man he had become. Selfish, entitled, devoid of empathy. "If you can't accept my parents living with us, then we're through," he stated coldly. "It's that simple." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. My marriage was a sham, my autonomy stripped away piece by piece. But I wouldn't be a victim anymore. Clenching my fists, I met Mike's gaze with a newfound strength. "I won't be manipulated anymore. This house is about my father's legacy, and I'm going to protect it, with or without you." As I walked out that day, I knew there was no turning back. But for the first time in years, I felt free, ready to reclaim the life my father had wanted for me. After I stormed out of my father's home in a fit of anger, I found myself wandering aimlessly through the city streets. The crisp night air provided little solace as I grappled with the profound betrayal I had endured. Mike's callous disregard for my feelings had cut me deeply. Eventually, I made my way to Paul's apartment, the one place I felt I could find refuge. As I stepped inside, a wave of calm washed over me, a momentary escape from the turmoil raging within. I sank into the familiar comfort of his worn armchair, allowing the anger and hurt to slowly subside. In that moment of quiet, I found myself haunted by the sickening realization that my husband had so brazenly violated my trust. How could he have authorized such drastic changes to Dad's cherished home without my consent? The sting of that betrayal burned fiercely, fueling my indignation. As the hours ticked by, I pictured Mike's smug satisfaction as he oversaw the destruction of that sacred space, the desecration of Dad's memory. My fury mounted as I imagined his callous disregard for my feelings, his selfish disrespect for all that Dad had left me. The man had no shame, no regard for the sanctity of that connection to my father. In that moment, I resolved to sever that final tie to him, to cut that last cord binding me to his contempt. I would not allow his arrogance to further defile Dad's legacy, to strip me of that precious link to the man who had given me so much. I would reclaim my dignity, my self-respect, by severing that final thread. With a renewed sense of purpose, I rose from the chair, determined to preserve that last remnant of my father's spirit. I would not permit Mike's callous disregard to taint that final bond, that last connection to the man who had nurtured me, who had shaped my character. I would not allow his scorn to further diminish my sense of self. With a steadying breath, I made my way to the small alcove where I kept my few cherished possessions from Dad. There, nestled in a worn leather case, was the small token of his affection, the simple memento of his love, the antique fountain pen he had given me on my 16th birthday. I grasped the smooth, polished surface, feeling the familiar curve of the nib against my fingertips, and began to chronicle my resolve, my determination to preserve that final connection to the man who had meant so much. In the days following my confrontation with Mike, I found myself adrift, untethered from the life I had once known. The decision to leave my husband had been agonizing, but I knew in my heart it was the only path forward. I could no longer subject myself to his manipulation, his blatant disregard for my autonomy. As I settled into the modest apartment Paul had offered me, I felt a strange sense of calm amidst the turmoil. This space, though unfamiliar, represented a clean slate, a chance to rebuild my life on my own terms, free from the toxic influence of Mike and his overbearing parents. Yet, even as I sought to move forward, the sting of Mike's betrayal lingered. The image of my father's house, that sacred space now defiled by his selfish renovations, haunted me. How could he have so callously disregarded my wishes, my connection to Dad's memory? In those quiet moments alone, I found myself wrestling with a burning sense of injustice. Mike had not only violated my trust, but had trampled upon the very essence of what Dad had left me, a sanctuary, a place of serenity and refuge. His actions had desecrated that final link to the man who had shaped me, who had instilled in me the values of integrity and respect. As the days turned to weeks, that simmering indignation began to crystallize into a fierce determination. I would not allow Mike's selfish ambitions to rob me of my father's legacy. That house, that cherished space, belonged to me, and I would reclaim it no matter the cost. It was during one of my frequent visits with Paul that the pieces began to fall into place. As we pored over the legal documents surrounding the inheritance, he placed a reassuring hand on my arm. "Gina, this house is yours, and yours alone. No one, not even Mike, can take that away from you." His words resonated deeply, reigniting the spark of defiance that had been smoldering within me. I met his gaze, my jaw set with newfound resolve. "You're right, Paul. It's time to protect what my father entrusted to me, to honor his memory in the way he would have wanted." From that moment on, a plan began to take shape. With Paul's guidance and unwavering support, I would navigate the legal intricacies, building an ironclad case to wrest control of the house from Mike's grasp. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, confrontations that would test the very limits of my resilience. But I was ready, fortified by the knowledge that I was fighting for something greater than myself, a sacred bond with the man who had given me life, the man whose values had shaped the core of my being. As I looked ahead to the impending battle, a sense of clarity washed over me. This was about more than just a house. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth. I would emerge from this crucible stronger, tempered by the fire of my convictions. And when the dust finally settled, I vowed that house would stand as a testament to my father's legacy, a beacon of resilience and unwavering love, shining through the darkness that had once threatened to consume me. In the weeks following my decision to leave Mike, I found solace in the company of an unexpected ally, Paul Hendricks, one of my father's oldest friends. As I settled into the modest apartment he had offered me, Paul's calming presence reminded me so much of Dad. "You know, Gina, your father spoke of you often," Paul said one evening as we sipped tea in his cozy living room. "He was immensely proud of the woman you've become." I felt a lump form in my throat at the mention of Dad. "I just wish he could see me now, Paul. I feel so lost without his guidance." Paul reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on mine. "Ted may be gone, but his spirit lives on in you. And that house he left you? It's a part of his legacy, his final gift." My thoughts turned to the Brooklyn Heights home, now tainted by Mike's selfish renovations. A pang of sadness washed over me, quickly replaced by a simmering anger. "That's just it, Paul. Mike has desecrated everything Dad stood for with that place. He's turned it into a battlefield, all for his own gain." Paul's eyes narrowed, a determined glint flickering behind his glasses. "Then we'll take it back, Gina. That house belongs to you, and no one can take that away." In the days that followed, Paul and I pored over legal documents, meticulously building a case to reclaim my inheritance. With each strategy session, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a fire igniting within me. "Your father trusted you with that home for a reason," Paul reminded me. "It's time to protect what he entrusted to you, to honor his memory in the way he would have wanted." Those words resonated deep within me, echoing the same resilience and strength that Dad had instilled from an early age. I was my father's daughter, imbued with his unwavering spirit. As our plan took shape, I found myself channeling that inner fortitude, drawing strength from the memories of Dad's unwavering love and support. This was about more than just a house. It was a battle to preserve his legacy, to ensure that the values he had imparted would endure. Finally, the day arrived for our first legal maneuver, a formal letter demanding that Mike and his parents vacate the premises immediately. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as Paul and I made our way to the house, each step fueled by a sense of righteous determination. When Mike answered the door, his expression quickly shifted from confusion to outright contempt. "Gina? What is this nonsense?" I steeled myself, meeting his gaze with an unwavering resolve. "This nonsense is me taking back what's rightfully mine. You had no right to make those decisions about my inheritance, Mike. This house is a part of my father's legacy, and I won't let you defile it any longer." As the words left my lips, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The shackles of Mike's manipulation, of his parents' toxic influence, began to loosen their grip. Mike's face contorted in anger, but before he could respond, Paul stepped forward, brandishing the legal documents like a sword. I suggest you heed this notice, Michael. We have taken all necessary steps to ensure Gina's rightful claim to this property. Any further resistance will only compound the consequences you face. In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was prepared to fight with every ounce of my being. This was about more than just a house. It was about reclaiming my autonomy, my self-worth. And with Paul's steadfast support, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, emboldened by the knowledge that I was honoring my father's most sacred gift. With Paul's steadfast support and guidance, the wheels were set in motion to reclaim what was rightfully mine, my father's cherished home in Brooklyn Heights. Yet, even as our legal strategy took shape, I knew the true battle would be far more personal, a confrontation I had been both dreading and anticipating. It was Paul who suggested we arrange a family dinner at the house, a final opportunity to resolve the matter civilly before escalating our efforts. Though apprehensive, I agreed, recognizing that this might be my last chance to appeal to whatever shred of decency still resided within Mike and his parents. The tension was palpable the moment they arrived, their expressions a mix of confusion and thinly veiled contempt. Denise, ever the antagonist, wasted no time in voicing her displeasure. "Just what is the meaning of this, Gina?" she sneered, her eyes narrowing. "We don't have time for your games." I took a deep breath, steadying myself as Paul gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "This is no game, Denise," I stated firmly. "You all had no right to make those decisions about my inheritance. This house is a part of my father's legacy, and I have a plan to honor that in a way he would have wanted." Mike scoffed, his disdain evident. "Your plan? Don't be ridiculous, Gina. This is our future we're talking about." "No, Mike," I countered, my voice unwavering. "This is about preserving what my father entrusted to me, what he wanted to leave behind for generations to come." Denise's face contorted in rage, and for a moment I thought she might explode. "You ungrateful, selfish girl, after everything we've done for you?" I felt Paul tense beside me, but I remained resolute, drawing strength from the memory of my father's unwavering spirit. "What you've done is try to take control, with no regard for Dad's wishes," I stated, meeting Denise's fiery gaze. "Well, it ends now. This house will become what it was always meant to be, a sanctuary, a place of peace and community, just as Dad envisioned." Frank, ever the passive observer, opened his mouth to protest, but I raised my hand, silencing him. "I've already taken the necessary legal steps to assume full ownership of this property. Any further resistance on your part will only lead to consequences none of us want." Mike's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched in barely contained fury. "So, you're just going to throw us out? Your own family?" I matched his stare, unflinching. "If that's what it takes to protect what's rightfully mine, then yes, this is the last time I'll be bullied or manipulated by any of you." An uneasy silence fell over the room, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, it was Denise who broke the tension, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "How dare you? After everything we've sacrificed for this family?" Paul stepped forward, his presence commanding respect. "I'm afraid you've left us no choice. We have the legal documentation to take over the property immediately. I suggest you make arrangements to leave." For a moment, it seemed as though Denise might unleash the full force of her fury, but Frank placed a hand on her arm, silencing her with a weary shake of his head. As they turned to leave, Mike lingered, his gaze filled with a potent mix of resentment and defeat. "You'll regret this, Gina," he spat venomously. "Mark my words." But as I watched them depart, I felt no regret, only a profound sense of relief and vindication. The shackles of their manipulation had finally been severed, and I was free to chart my own course, to honor the legacy my father had bestowed upon me. In the days and weeks that followed, Paul and I worked tirelessly to bring my vision for the house to life. We renovated and refurbished, creating a warm, welcoming space that embodied Dad's generous spirit and love for community. And as the grand opening day arrived, I knew Dad was there in spirit, surrounding me with the same serenity he had always provided. This was more than just a house. It was a living, breathing testament to his values, a sanctuary where his memory would endure for generations to come. The day of the grand opening arrived with a sense of nervous anticipation. As I stood in the newly renovated garden, taking in the vibrant blooms and meticulously landscaped paths, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride and accomplishment. This space, once tainted by Mike's selfish ambitions, had been transformed into a living embodiment of Dad's spirit, a sanctuary of peace and community, just as he would have wanted. The countless hours of hard work, the battles fought and won, had all led to this moment. "You've outdone yourself, Gina." Paul's warm voice broke through my reverie. He moved to stand beside me, his eyes shining with pride. "Your father would be in awe of what you've created here." I felt a lump form in my throat, overwhelmed by the weight of Dad's legacy. "I just hope I've honored his memory in the way he deserved, Paul. This place means everything to me." Paul placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Have no doubt, my dear. You've turned this house into something truly remarkable, a living testament to Ted's generous spirit." As the first guests began to arrive, I felt a surge of nervous energy coursing through me. This was it, the moment I had fought so hard for, the culmination of a journey that had tested the very limits of my resilience. Yet, as I greeted each visitor with a warm smile, I was struck by the overwhelming sense of community and camaraderie that permeated the air. These were Dad's people, the neighbors and friends, who had embraced his kindness and compassion over the years. One by one, they approached me, offering heartfelt congratulations and sharing cherished memories of the man who had touched so many lives. "Your father was a true gem, Gina," Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor, said with a misty-eyed smile. "He always had a kind word and a helping hand for anyone in need." Mr. Rodriguez, the local grocer, chimed in with a hearty laugh. "Remember when he organized that neighborhood cleanup day? Ted had us all out there bright and early, picking up trash like a bunch of kids on detention." As the anecdotes flowed, I found myself transported back to the simpler times of my childhood, when Dad's unwavering presence had been the bedrock of my world. Each story, each recollection, was a precious thread woven into the tapestry of his legacy. As the day wore on, the garden became a vibrant hub of activity, filled with the laughter of children and the warm embraces of old friends. I moved among the crowd, basking in the joy and sense of belonging that Dad had always fostered. It was in those moments that I truly understood the profound impact he had made, not just on my life, but on an entire community. This place, this sanctuary, was a living embodiment of his values: generosity, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to bringing people together. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the garden, I found myself standing in a quiet corner, taking in the scene with a sense of profound gratitude. Dad's spirit was alive and thriving here, a testament to the power of one man's unwavering love and compassion. "Dad, I hope you're proud," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "This is for you, a legacy that will endure for generations to come." And in that moment I could have sworn I felt his presence, a gentle breeze caressing my cheek, carrying with it the familiar scent of his cologne. A subtle reminder that he was never truly gone, but lived on in the hearts and lives of those he had touched. As Paul approached, his eyes shining with pride, I knew that my journey had reached its ultimate destination, a place of healing, redemption, and an unbreakable connection to the man who had shaped me into the woman I had become. "You did it, Gina," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You turned this place into something beautiful, a living embodiment of everything your father stood for." And as I looked around at the joyous scene unfolding before me, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same resilience and grace that Dad had instilled in me. For this was his true legacy, a gift that would continue to nurture and inspire long after I was gone. "Guess what? We had a baby! Come celebrate with us!" Vanessa's voice dripped with insincerity as it came through the phone, jolting me out of the quiet comfort of my living room. My fingers tightened around the phone. The audacity of this woman never ceased to amaze me. "Vanessa," I said slowly, forcing a calmness into my voice that I did not feel. "Congratulations." "Thanks, Emily. It's going to be this Saturday. You have to come. It wouldn't be the same without you." Her cheerful tone grated against my nerves, but I wasn't about to let her see that. "I'll check our calendar," I replied, non-committal. The last thing I wanted was to celebrate anything with Vanessa, but but I knew avoiding her completely was impossible. "Perfect. See you there." She hung up before I could respond. I let out a deep sigh and dropped the phone onto the couch. Derek, who must have noticed the tension on my face, walked over from the kitchen. "What's wrong?" he asked, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "It's Vanessa," I said, unable to prevent the bitterness creeping into my voice. "She wants us to come to a celebration for their new baby." Derek's expression darkened. "She's something else, isn't she? She stole my fiancé without a second thought, and now she wants me to celebrate with her?" I said, more to myself than to Derek. The past I had tried so hard to move on from reared its ugly head yet again. "We don't have to go if you don't want to," Derek suggested, wrapping his arms around me. I leaned into his embrace, closing my eyes and trying to let the warmth of his touch soothe me. "No," I said after a moment. "We'll go. I need to show her that I've moved on, that she didn't break me." Derek kissed the top of my head. "I'll be right there with you." Saturday arrived quicker than I would have liked. As we drove to Vanessa and Brian's home, memories of my past relationship with Brian flooded my mind. I pushed them aside, focusing on the present. Derek's presence beside me was an anchor. We reached the house, a picture-perfect suburban home. Vanessa had always wanted the most desirable things. Her attention to superficial details never changed. As we walked up to the front door, Vanessa was there to greet us. "Emily, Derek, I am so glad you could make it." She hugged me stiffly, an overly sweet smile plastered on her face. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, my own smile not quite reaching my eyes. Brian was inside, holding the baby, a proud smile on his face. Seeing him after all this time brought back a flood of emotions, but I held my head high and walked over to him. "Congratulations, Brian." "Thanks, Emily. It means a lot that you're here," he said, his smile genuine. I could see a flicker of the man I used to love in his eyes, but it was quickly overshadowed by the reality of our past. Derek stayed close by, his presence a constant reassurance. Vanessa fluttered around, playing the perfect hostess, but I could sense the tension beneath her polished exterior. Near the end of the party, Vanessa cornered me in the kitchen while I was getting a drink. "So how's married life treating you?" she asked. "Better than I could have ever imagined," I replied honestly, a genuine smile on my face this time. She studied me for a moment before speaking again. "You've really moved on, haven't you?" "Yes, Vanessa," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "I have." A shadow crossed her face, but she quickly replaced it with another fake smile. "That's good to hear." Derek appeared in the doorway then, holding my coat. "You ready to go, Emily?" "Yes, I am," I said, walking over to him and slipping my arm through his. I looked back at Vanessa one last time. "Goodbye, Vanessa." As we walked out of the house, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had faced the ghosts of my past, and I was stronger for it. Derek squeezed my hand, a silent promise that we would face whatever came next together. Back home, the drive still lingering in my mind, Derek sat beside me, warm and silent. I knew what I had to do. The past few days had stirred something inside me, a need to confront the memories I'd buried. I was sitting at the dining table when it hit me, Brian's blue eyes, his light laughter, and how it all began. Just a small volunteer event downtown. "Emily," he had said, extending a hand as we stood by the food stand. "I'm Brian. Nice to finally meet you in person." His smile was genuine, and his eyes lit up when he saw me. We had exchanged emails for months, brainstorming ways to support local shelters. In person, he was even more charming. We clicked instantly, sharing an easy camaraderie. As the months went by, our meetings turned into dates. One cool autumn evening, Brian and I stood on a rickety bridge overlooking a small, serene creek. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his coat pocket. My heart raced. As he opened the box, the glint of the diamond ring caught the moonlight. "Emily, will you marry me?" His voice was soft, hopeful, as if the world hung on my answer. I had said yes. It had felt right, destined even. Until Vanessa. Vanessa had shown up at our engagement party, uninvited but with that signature smile. "Ems, long time no see," she had said, pulling me into a hug. Despite her cheerful demeanor, an unsettling chill always accompanied Vanessa. Derek wandered into the room, breaking my reverie. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, sitting across from me. "Just remembering how it all started," I replied. "I'd like to hear it, if you're willing to share," he said gently. "All right," I said, drawing a deep breath. Vanessa had been the friend everyone warned you about, always looking for ways to undermine, subtly belittle. She had a knack for finding weaknesses and exploiting them. It was no wonder she had wormed her way into Brian's life. One afternoon, I had suggested a double date, introduce Vanessa to Brian, try to mend old fences. But as weeks passed, Brian seemed increasingly distant. "You're working late again?" I'd asked him one night, a hint of frustration in my voice. "Yeah, just a lot going on at the office," he replied, not meeting my eyes. The strain between us grew, but I wanted to believe in him, in us, until one evening, by sheer chance, I stumbled upon them. They were at the local park, hidden away but not invisible. Brian was in Vanessa's embrace, her lips pressed close to his ear. "You're so much more exciting than Emily." His voice was low, but the words seared into me. Vanessa's laughter followed. "I knew you'd realize how boring she is." I felt the ground fall beneath me, I said to Derek now, my voice trembling. Derek reached over, taking my hand in his. "And yet here you are, stronger than ever." I nodded. It wasn't easy, but it made me who I am now. "I believe in you, Emily. We'll face whatever comes next together." His resolve steadied me. With Derek by my side, I felt a new surge of strength. I would see this through, and Vanessa would see just how strong I had become. The next day, as I sorted through my old photos, I found one of Brian and me at a small cafe. It was from the day I introduced him to Vanessa. The three of us, laughing and oblivious to the chaos that lay ahead. I remember that day vividly. It was the first time the two of them met. We were at the Red Maple Cafe, a quaint place downtown known for its coffee and pastries. "Brian, this is Vanessa," I said cheerfully, motioning to her as she walked in. Vanessa flashed her charming smile, and I felt a pang of unease. "Nice to meet you, Vanessa," Brian said, shaking her hand. "Likewise, Brian. Emily talks about you all the time," Vanessa replied smoothly. We settled at a corner table. Brian and Vanessa started chatting about everything: movies, travel, work. Vanessa had a way of making people open up, making them feel like they were the only person in the room. I tried to join in, but it became clear I was more an observer than a participant. Weeks passed, and Brian began to grow distant. He blamed it on work stress. I didn't want to believe anything else. One night, as he left for another supposed late-night meeting, I decided to follow him. Under the dim streetlights, I trailed his car until he stopped at a park. He got out, and there she was, Vanessa, waiting for him. I watched from a distance, hiding in the shadows. They talked, but soon their conversation turned into an embrace, and then a kiss. "You're so much more exciting than Emily," Brian said, running his fingers through her hair. Vanessa laughed softly. "I knew you'd realize how boring she is." My heart shattered. The betrayal was like a knife twisting in my gut. I stumbled back, trying to leave quietly, but stepped on a branch. "What was that?" Brian snapped, looking around. I ducked behind a tree, holding my breath. After a moment, they seemed to shrug it off, and I took the chance to escape. My world crashed down around me that night. I went to our apartment and waited, tears streaming down my face. When Brian came home, I confronted him. "So, late night at work, huh?" I said bitterly. He looked startled. "Emily, it's not what you think." "Save it, Brian," I cut him off, my voice shaking. "I saw you with her. How long has this been going on?" He ran a hand through his hair, eyes avoiding mine. I'm sorry, Emily. I didn't mean for this to happen." "How could you do this to me? To us?" Anger mixed with heartbreak in my voice. "It just happened," he said weakly. "I felt something with Vanessa that I didn't feel with me." I interrupted. "Spare me, Brian. You're pathetic." He looked like he wanted to say more, but I couldn't take it. I grabbed my purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind me. I called Vanessa the next day. "We need to talk," I said coldly. "Sure, Emily. Should I bring coffee?" Her tone was mocking. I met her at the cafe. The confrontation was swift and brutal. "Why, Vanessa?" She shrugged, a smirk playing on her lips. "Because I could, Emily, and because you trust too easily." "You're vile," I said, my voice low. "Maybe, but I'm good at it," she replied with satisfaction. That was the last day I spoke to either of them. Until now. As I placed the photo back into the box, Derek came into the room. "You all right?" he asked, concern in his eyes. "Yeah," I said, taking his hand. "I'm ready to face what's next." "Remember, I'm with you every step of the way," he reassured me. With his support, I knew I could confront the darkest parts of my past and come out stronger on the other side. I woke up the next morning feeling drained, yet resolute. The confrontation last night had dredged up old wounds, but it also gave me a newfound determination. It was time to rebuild. The first step was to get out of the house. I threw on a comfortable pair of jeans and a sweater, and Derek suggested we go for a walk to clear our minds. We strolled down the bustling streets, eventually finding ourselves at a small, cozy cafe. "I could use a coffee," Derek said, smiling at me. "Sounds good," I replied. As we sat at a corner table, I glanced around and noticed a familiar face. Derek must have seen my expression change. "What's up?" he asked. "It's Brian," I said quietly, motioning with my eyes. He was sitting alone, staring into a cup of coffee. The sight of him brought back a flood of emotions, but I kept my composure. "Do you want to leave?" Derek asked, ready to whisk me away at a moment's notice. "No," I said firmly. "I need to face this." I walked over to Brian, each step deliberate and steady. He looked up, eyes widening in surprise. "Emily." "Brian," I said, taking a seat across from him. I'm sorry," he stammered, but I held up a hand to stop him. "I'm not here for apologies," I said simply. "I just want to understand why." Brian looked down, fiddling with the handle of his cup. "I don't have a good excuse, Emily. I was selfish. Vanessa was different, new. I know it's no justification." "No, it's not," I replied bluntly. "You knew what we had meant to me, and yet you chose to throw it all away." He nodded, a look of regret etched on his face. "I know, and I've regretted it every day since." "Does Vanessa know you feel this way?" I asked, curious about the dynamics of their relationship now. He hesitated, then sighed. "Vanessa doesn't care about how I feel. She never has. It's always been about her." I studied him for a moment. The man sitting before me was a shadow of the person I once loved. "And yet you stayed with her." "Leaving her now would ruin everything," he said quietly. "My career, my reputation. She knows too much." I could see the fear in his eyes. Vanessa had a grip on him tighter than I'd imagined. "Brian," I said softly, "you deserve better than to live in fear." He shook his head, clearly defeated. "I don't know if I can ever get out." I stood up, determined to face my future without looking back. "That's your choice to make, Brian, but I won't be a part of it." I walked back to Derek, who had watched the whole exchange from a distance. "How did it go?" he asked, eyes filled with concern. "I think it's time to stop dwelling on the past," I said with a newfound clarity. Derek nodded. "Sounds like a good plan." Days passed, and I focused on my work and building a life with Derek. It was during a business seminar that my new chapter truly began. I met Derek again, though this time as partners running our own startup. He was speaking about innovation when our eyes met across the room. "Building something new requires vision and partnership," he concluded, stepping down from the podium. I approached him, confidence restored. "Great speech, Derek," I said, a genuine smile lighting up my face. "Thanks, Emily. We make a good team, don't we?" he replied, returning my smile. "We do. Here's to new beginnings," I said, holding up my coffee cup. "To new beginnings," he echoed, clinking his cup against mine. As we walked out together, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, Derek and I would face them hand in hand. The past had shaped me, but it wouldn't define me. I was ready for whatever came next. The call from Vanessa lingered in my mind, but I knew attending their gathering was the first step in facing my demons. Derek was supportive. "Together, we'll show her you can't be broken," he said one evening as we planned our approach. "I won't let her get the best of me," I replied, my resolve hardening. The night before the visit, we sat on the living room couch, going through our plan. "Derek, she'll try to provoke us. We need to keep calm, no matter what." "I'll be right there with you," he reassured, holding my gaze. The day arrived. As we parked outside Vanessa and Brian's lavish suburban home, my heart raced. Derek squeezed my hand. "You ready?" "Yes," I replied, taking a deep breath before we walked to the door. Vanessa greeted us with that overly sweet smile. "Emily, Derek, come in," she chirped, but her eyes were calculating. I could see the gears turning in her head. Brian approached, a drink in hand. "It's been a long time, Emily." "Yes, it has," I replied coolly, meeting his gaze briefly before looking away. The room was filled with guests, laughter, and chatter. Vanessa played the perfect hostess, but there was an edge to her actions. She fluttered between guests, but her eyes kept darting to me. Derek and I mingled, making polite conversation. As the evening wore on, Vanessa approached me, a faux friendly smile plastered on her face. "Emily, can we privately?" Sure, I said, maintaining a calm exterior as I followed her to a quieter corner. You've moved on, I see, Vanessa said, her tone laced with insincerity. I have, I replied steadily. Good for you, her eyes narrowed. But let's be real, you came here to prove something, didn't you? I met her gaze head on. I came to show you that I'm stronger than you think. We'll see about that, she said, a sinister smile crossing her lips. She reached into a nearby drawer and pulled out a small recorder. I have something for you, she said, pressing play. Brian's voice crackled through the speaker. Vanessa, you're right. Emily was too trusting, too naive. My stomach churned, but I kept my face impassive. Nice trick, Vanessa, I commented dryly. She leaned closer. I always knew you were too soft for this world, but look where I am now. Before I could respond, Derek walked up. Everything all right here? He asked, his eyes locking on Vanessa's. Perfect timing, I said, smiling at him. Vanessa's eyes widened. He really is your husband? Derek extended his hand. Derek, CEO of Greenleaf Inc. Nice to meet you, he said smoothly. Vanessa stumbled back, shock and realization crossing her face. Is this for real? Yes, Vanessa, I said, satisfaction dripping from my words. Very real. At that moment, Brian walked over, sensing the tension. What's going on here? Vanessa tried to regain her composure, but it was too late. Derek turned to Brian. We were just discussing how integrity is key in both personal and business relationships. Brian's eyes flicked between us, uncertainty clouding his face. Vanessa? He questioned, looking at her warily. She opened her mouth to retort, but the damage was done. The cracks in her facade were visible. Derek placed a protective arm around me. Let's get going, Emily. Yes, let's, I agreed. We walked out, leaving Vanessa and Brian to deal with the aftermath of their duplicity. In the car, Derek leaned over and kissed my forehead. You did great, Emily. Thanks, I said, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. I think I finally got my closure. With each mile back home, the past drifted further behind us. What lay ahead was a future built on honesty, love, and mutual respect. A future Vanessa could only dream of. The following weekend, it was time to put our plan into action. Derek and I arrived separately. Derek would come a bit later, just as we had rehearsed. I walked up to Vanessa's door, confidence radiating from my every step. She answered with that same disingenuous smile. Emily, alone again? She smirked. I wouldn't be so sure, I replied coolly, stepping inside. The house was filled with the usual gathering of their friends. Vanessa led me to the living room, where Brian was talking with some guests. He looked up, surprise crossing his face. Emily, good to see you again, he said, though his voice lacked enthusiasm. Brian, I nodded. Vanessa's eyes darted between us, calculating. So, she began, addressing the room, we have a guest tonight. Emily, why don't you say a few words? The room quieted, all eyes on me. I felt a surge of determination. Thank you, Vanessa. It's nice to be here among friends, I started, my voice steady. It's funny how life changes, how people and relationships evolve. Brian shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa's smile was tighter. Oh, we all know about evolving relationships, don't we? She said sweetly. I continued, unapologetic. I met Derek a few years ago at a business seminar. He's been my rock ever since. And though we started from scratch, we've come a long way. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. The doorbell rang, a perfectly timed interruption. Derek walked in, immediately drawing the room's attention. Apologies, traffic was horrendous, he said, making his way to my side. Derek, CEO of Greenleaf Inc. Nice to finally meet everyone, he added, shaking hands with a few guests. Vanessa's eyes widened in recognition, but she quickly composed herself. Looks like you weren't lying, Emily, she chuckled, although her eyes betrayed her. The evening continued, and it wasn't long before Vanessa beckoned me to follow her into the study. I glanced at Derek, who nodded slightly. It was time. Emily, let's have a private chat, she suggested, a hint of malice in her tone. I followed her, entering the cluttered room filled with awards and framed photos. Vanessa shut the door behind us. So enjoy playing house with your rich husband? She sneered. You seem awfully interested in my life, Vanessa, I replied calmly. Maybe a bit too interested. She walked to a drawer, pulling out the same recorder. Remember this? She asked, pressing play, but there was nothing. Her face paled. What did you do? The real question is, what have you done, Vanessa? I said. Just then, Derek walked in. Sorry to intrude, but I couldn't help overhearing, he said, stepping beside me. Vanessa, how many secrets do you have stuffed away in that drawer? Her face contorted with rage. You think you can waltz in and disrupt my life? Derek remained calm. Your life was built on lies. Time for them to come crashing down. He pulled out his phone, playing a recording where Vanessa was heard whispering multiple indiscretions to different men. It was all laid bare. Vanessa's facade crumbled. You're destroying me, she hissed. No, Vanessa, you did that to yourself, I replied, the weight of past betrayals lifting. Brian burst into the room, hearing the tail end of our confrontation. What is going on, he demanded. Derek turned to him. Your wife's been deceiving you far more than you know, Brian. Brian looked at Vanessa, realization and hurt crossing his face. Is it true? He asked, voice breaking. Vanessa whimpered, tears streaming down her face. Brian, I can explain. Don't. I've heard enough, he interrupted, storming out. Derek took my hand, guiding me out of the study. The guests stood in awkward silence as we made our exit. Outside, Derek turned to me, his eyes full of pride. You did it, Emily. You faced her. I smiled, a sense of liberation washing over me. We did it together. As we drove away, I couldn't help but feel a tremendous sense of closure. Vanessa's true nature had been exposed, and I was free, ready to embrace the future with Derek, leaving the past well and truly behind. As we left Vanessa's house, the satisfaction of exposing her deceit filled me with a sense of relief. Derek drove us home in silence, his hand firmly holding mine. The weight of the past few months was slowly lifting. The next morning, I received a call from an unknown number. Emily, it's Brian, the voice on the other end said, sounding defeated. What do you want, Brian? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I needed to talk. Can we meet? He asked, desperation evident in his voice. All right, the Red Maple Cafe in an hour, I replied before hanging up. When I arrived, Brian was already seated, looking disheveled and worn out. I sat down across from him. So what's this about? I asked. Vanessa and I had a massive fight last night after you left. She's been lying to me about so many things, affairs, money, everything, he said, rubbing his temples. She's never been honest, Brian. You chose to ignore the signs, I stated simply. I know, he admitted, tears welling up in his eyes. I don't know what to do, Emily. My life is falling apart. I looked at him, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. Brian, the truth is, you let this happen. Vanessa manipulated you because you allowed her. Now you have to decide if you want to change things. He nodded, taking in my words. I've been such a fool. Yes, I agreed, but it's not too late to start over. You need to find your own path, away from Vanessa. Brian took a deep breath. You're right. I'm filing for divorce. I need to rediscover who I am without her. Good luck, Brian, I said sincerely, standing up to leave. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a sense of closure with Brian. It was time to focus on myself and my future with Derek. Later that evening, Derek and I were sitting in our living rooms working on some documents for our company. The atmosphere was peaceful, a sharp contrast to the chaos we'd recently faced. Emily, I got an email from our biggest investor. They want to meet us to discuss expanding our project, Derek said, excitement in his voice. That's amazing news, I replied, sharing his enthusiasm. We've come so far together, Derek said, taking my hand. I couldn't have done it without you. And I couldn't have faced my past without you, I replied, squeezing his hand. The following week, Vanessa's dirty laundry was aired publicly. Social media and local news buzzed with details of her multiple affairs and financial misdeeds. Her world was crumbling. Brian called again, this time to thank me. Emily, I've started the divorce process, he said. I owe it to myself to be better. I'm glad to hear that, Brian. Take care of yourself, I replied, genuinely wishing him well. Vanessa, on the other hand, tried to salvage her ruined reputation. She called me, but I ignored it. Derek and I had more important things to focus on, our future. One evening, as Derek and I walked through a park hand in hand, he stopped and looked at me. Emily, this is just the beginning for us. I can't wait to see what we'll achieve together. I smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Together, we're unstoppable. As we embraced, the weight of the past finally lifted from my shoulders. The journey had been long and painful, but it had forged something unbreakable between Derek and me. Returning home, we celebrated the victory of stepping into a new chapter of our lives. Our company was gaining momentum, and our relationship was stronger than ever. Derek raised a toast. To new beginnings, he said, his eyes full of promise. To love and resilience, I added, clinking my glass against his. With Derek by my side, I knew we could face whatever challenges lay ahead, leaving the shadows of our past far behind. A few weeks later, the fallout from Vanessa's exposure was still echoing through our small town. Derek and I focused on our work, growing stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, I received a call from a number I recognized too well. "Emily, it's Vanessa." Her voice was weak, a stark contrast to her usual bravado. "What do you want, Vanessa?" I asked, keeping my tone cold. "Meet me. Please, I need to talk," she begged. "Why should I?" I countered. "Just please." "I'm at the park near the old library," she said before hanging up. I found her sitting on a bench, looking more gaunt and haunted than ever. She saw me and started to speak. "Emily, everything's falling apart. Brian's left. Our finances are a mess. I need help," she pleaded, tears pooling in her eyes. "Help?" I scoffed. "You destroyed my life and expect me to help you?" "I know I've done terrible things, but I'm desperate," she admitted, her voice breaking. "You poisoned everything you touched, Vanessa. This is your mess to clean up," I answered firmly. "I'm begging you, Emily. I have no one else," she said, sobbing now. I looked at her, feeling a pang of pity, but reminded myself of the pain she caused. "Find a way out yourself, Vanessa. Like you said, I was too naive before. Not anymore." I turned and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions. I called Derek, my anchor in this storm. "How did it go?" he asked. "She's hit rock bottom," I said, relief mixed with a touch of sadness in my voice. "You did the right thing," he reassured. Days turned into weeks, and Derek and I continued to push our business forward. One evening, I received a call from our biggest investor. "Emily, I'm pleased to inform you that your proposal has been accepted. We are funding your project," the voice on the other end announced. "That's fantastic news," I exclaimed, excitement bubbling inside me. Derek overheard and rushed over. "What is it?" "We got the funding," I said, throwing my arms around him. "We did it." Derek smiled, a look of pride on his face. I knew we would. Later, we celebrated with close friends and family at our home. Among the guests was Margaret, Derek's mother, who had been a pillar of support. "I'm so proud of you both," she said, embracing us. "Thank you, Margaret." "We wouldn't have done it without your encouragement," I replied, genuinely grateful. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Derek and I found a quiet moment together. "This is just the beginning," Derek said, holding my hand. "Yes, it is," I agreed, my heart full of hope for the future. The next few months were a whirlwind of meetings, traveling, and growing our business. Our hard work paid off, and soon we celebrated a major milestone with our team. "To success," Derek toasted. "And to the incredible journey ahead," I added, clinking my glass with his. In the midst of all this, news of Vanessa continued to circulate. She lost her job, her house, and eventually left town in disgrace. The last I heard, she moved back in with her parents, a far cry from the life she once flaunted. One summer afternoon, Derek and I sat in our backyard, reflecting on everything that had transpired. "You know," I said thoughtfully, "I never imagined we'd get here from where we started." Derek nodded. "But we did, Emily. We turned the worst chapters into our greatest strength." I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. "Thank you, Derek, for everything." "We're a team," he replied softly, "and together we can face anything." As we watched the sunset, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been tumultuous, but it had led to a place of true happiness and fulfillment. Derek and I were ready for all the new adventures life had in store for us, with the past firmly behind us. Together, we had redefined our path, turning pain into purpose and building a future grounded in mutual respect and love. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all.